Good morning. Welcome. I see you have quorum. I'll call this meeting to order. Number 8 of the Economic Committee and Development Committee. Welcome to committee members, to visiting members of council in attendance today, to members of the public, and to the media. You can follow the agenda and debate on your computer, tablet, or smartphone at www.toronto.ca/council. The Economic Development Committee acknowledges the land we are meeting on as a traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. It is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We will now go through the agenda. 8.1, presentation of the annual, declarations of interest. Seeing none. 8.1, presentation of the annual Partnership in Advanced Youth Employment Leadership Award. We're going to hold that and probably have that at 10:30. Can I have conference of minutes from September 5th, 2019? Moved by Councillor Cressy. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.2, non-competitive agreement with Priority Dispatch Corporation for Proprietary training of quality assurance support for Toronto Paramedic Services, use of medical priority dispatch system. Moved by Councillor Lai. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.3, amendment to purchase order number 6033858 issued to Buttcon Limited for redevelopment Kipling Access Long-Term Home. Moved by Councillor Carroll. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.4, relationships with Toronto Community Housing non-for-profit sector, 2018 to 2019 update. We have speakers. 8.5, resourcing the Regent Park Social Development Plan. We have speakers. 8.6, establishing strategic priorities for cultural investment, 2020 to 24. We have speakers. 8.7, Tourism Toronto Governance Update. Moved by Councillor Cressy. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.8, realignment of the 2 cultural grants programs. We have speakers. Withdrawn. The speaker's withdrawn. Councillor Cressy? The speaker's withdrawn. Yeah. Councillor Cressy moves 8.8. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.9, sustaining the vibrancy of Campbell House Museum. We'll hold that for speakers.
Sure. I heard from Blair Bowen this morning from the foundation. It's in my ward, and he is no longer preparing to attend, so I'm happy to move the recommendations.
Okay. Councillor Cressy is moving the recommendation 8.9. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.10, Uptown Young Business Improvement Area Board of Management changes. Moved by Councillor Cressy. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.11, proposed Rogers Road Business Improvement Area. Moved by Councillor Lai. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.12, Toronto Economic Bulletin. Moved by Councillor Carroll. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.13, accessing fire safety, fire code compliance, update on Toronto Fire Services service level enhancements. Moved by Councillor Lai. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.14, 2019 second quarter status report on audit recommendations, opening doors to stable housing. Moved by Councillor Cressy. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.15, equity-based planning for early on child and family centers. We have speakers. 8.16, provincial funding changes and previously approved childcare capital projects update. We have speakers. 8.17, expansion of Toronto's Winterlicious Summerlicious program. Moved by Councillor Lai. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.18, cost recovery for emergency service rescues due to misadventures at Scarborough Bluffs. I'd like to hold that. Councillor Lai, I'll put that in your name. And we have one further communication from Councillor McKelvey. It's on your pink sheet here. I need a motion to add that to the agenda. Moved by Councillor Lai. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. That'll be 8.19. Any of these timed? So I go to 4. Okay, our first item is 8.4, relations with Toronto Community Housing. Oh, sorry, sorry. Yeah, we're going to do that 10:30, Council President. Relations with Toronto Community-Based Non-for-Profit Sector 2018 to 2019 update. We have a couple of speakers. Rhonda Leeson. Is Ms. Leeson here? Rhonda Leeson. Next week, Rob Howarth. Morning, Rob. Welcome. Good morning. Good morning. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
I think Rhonda is just on her way, so hopefully she'll make it.
Okay.
Just after I do. Good morning, councillors. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you about this item. My name is Rob Howarth. I'm the Executive Director of a network of 27 nonprofit social service agencies in Toronto called the Toronto Neighbourhood Centres. I'm speaking with you today on behalf of a relatively new organization, however, called the Toronto Nonprofit Network. This network currently connects over 400 not-for-profit community organizations that are active in strengthening the social and economic fabric of our city, including arts and culture, environmental, social services, sports and recreation, and faith community organizations. The Toronto Nonprofit Network has emerged over the last 3 years, in part as a consequence of the city's forward-looking efforts and Council's 2017 adoption of Canada's first municipal government-wide framework to guide its relationships with our city's not-for-profit sector. A wonderful step forward. As part of the city's leadership in this area, it became clear that our sector's diverse and extensive array of over 14,000 community not-for-profit organizations needed to be tapped into and supported to engage with the city's policy development process. So we have fashioned the emerging Toronto Nonprofit Network as a platform to work actively with the city to inform and support the development of policies that will assist all nonprofits to do their work. Today, we're very happy to be speaking with you about the Framework's update report. Through the Toronto Nonprofit Network's participation on the community advisory table for this work, a diverse range of sector organizations have been engaged in helping to move the 24 action items forward. And we can confirm our full support for the updated action plan that you have received as part of the update. One of those actions took place 2 weeks ago when the Mayor declared October 2nd Not-for-Profit Recognition Day, the first of what we hope to establish as a yearly event. This was an important moment in raising the profile of our work and receiving formal acknowledgement and thanks from the city for the contributions our sector makes to community well-being. Over 300 organizations engaged in this day with activities happening in every ward. We trended on Twitter all day, competing against the Maple Leafs home opener, which we're very proud of. And many organizations took this opportunity to reach out to their local councillors to make important connections. In the coming years, we hope to continue this collaboration with the city to make this day a popular community event so that more and more residents across our city are made aware of the amazing collective impact of their nonprofit organizations. Looking forward, we're particularly pleased to see the 2 new commitments that have been recommended as additions to the initial framework agreement: the commitment to reconciliation with Indigenous peoples and the commitment to community space. Our sector includes Indigenous-led not-for-profit organizations that undertake critical activities on behalf of Indigenous peoples, but the foundation of these organizations' relationship with our city government is unique and requires separate focus and attention to ensure that the city policies and practices support a focus of reconciliation and Indigenous self-determination. And I just refer you to the letter submitted by Jeffrey Schiffer on this item as well, which goes into more detail in that area. In terms of the additional commitment to community space, we wish to stress the urgency associated with this commitment. As the Mayor's proclamation noted, our sector's economic impact is at least $14 billion annually, double that of the tourism sector. It represents over 8% of Toronto's GDP, and it provides meaningful work for over 200,000 people. And most importantly, it generates immense public benefit by improving the health and well-being of Torontonians. It's no exaggeration to say that much of this activity has been placed upon a precarious footing as a result of rising costs for community organizations to access space to conduct their activities. As nonprofit organizations seek to renew leases over the coming years, more and more will find themselves priced out of Toronto's market and unable to sustain their work here. There's an urgent need for a proactive response to this challenge, which to date has received very little attention. And we look forward to working with the city to identify strategies that will place our nonprofit sector on a more sustainable footing, ensuring that community organizations can continue to nurture the qualities of community inclusion, equity, and opportunity that are so central to our city's success. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Questions? See none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Did Rhonda Leeson? Rhonda? Good morning, Rhonda. Welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Rhonda Leeson. I am Senior Manager, Community Service Sector at United Way Greater Toronto, and I'm speaking on behalf of Ruth Cramond and Maureen Thompson, who are not able to be here today. First, we would like to thank the staff of the Social Development, Finance and Administration for developing the framework on relationships with nonprofits, for listening to Torontonians, for adding recommendations on Indigenous reconciliation and community use of space, and for committing to tracking and evaluating specific action items on this framework. The City of Toronto is one of the most successful in the world on many international markers. We are proud of our city for its diversity and for being a place of great economic and social opportunity. Our community-based nonprofit sector is fundamental to our success. This is where our children develop as people, leaders, and citizens, where newcomers learn how to build capacity to live in and contribute to their new home, where people get support when things are not good, and where we go to make our neighborhoods a better place. And community-based nonprofits are more and more important in helping our city respond to some of our biggest challenges. United Way released our third Opportunity Equation report, Rebalancing the Opportunity Equation, this summer on the state of our city. The news is not good for us. Toronto is the income inequality capital of the country. Social and economic inequity is growing, and despite the positive economic growth in the region, people are being left behind. Now more than ever, the work done by our community-based nonprofits is essential to the well-being of the whole city. And they are doing more with less. Few funders provide the essential core funding that makes organizations sustainable and stable, and that allows for capacity building and professional development. And the demands on the sector are increasing. Within this context, nonprofits must demonstrate impact in their work with more diverse and complex communities and issues. But the sector, like the city, is resilient, adaptable, and continues to find new ways to do better, but never alone. United Way has a long history of collaboration with the city and the nonprofit sector to make things better for all in complicated times. Together, we leverage resources to meet needs. For example, our community benefits work to ensure that our biggest infrastructure projects employ residents of the low-income neighborhoods where these projects happen, or the support of community hubs across the city because poverty has spread to the inner suburbs and beyond, or the Toronto Refugee Reception Centre, which brings together many agencies for more seamless, faster, and more efficient support to newly arrived refugees. As the largest non-governmental funder of social services in the region, this year, United Way is investing in community services across the city to address poverty in our community. We invest supporting community service agencies and strong programs with a focus on targeting neighborhoods and populations most impacted by poverty. We also work with the City of Toronto and other stakeholders to find solutions and to look for opportunities to improve services and community. We are pleased that the city staff has recommended a renewed focus on Indigenous issues, as this is a growing area of our own investment, both socially and financially. We are also pleased with the recommendations on community space. Residents and agencies tell us that affordable and accessible community space is critical to a good quality of life, but very difficult to find. But our support of the sector is more than just a series of financial transactions. We work with it to build its capacity and sustainability, to identify and overcome systemic issues, and to convey other city-building organizations, our donors and partners in government to help ensure Torontonians have the opportunities and support they need to build better lives. This updated framework is an opportunity to work together and take our work with the sector to the next level. It has laid the foundation for the city to take a similar approach as funder and supporter of our community-based not-for-profit partners. We are committed to learning and working together to sharing expertise and lessons in order to make good on our mutual promise to this great city and all of its citizens for the public benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a question, Councillor Carroll?
Yes, you raised the issue of space right near the end there, that it does come out as the burning need there, and we have to
Yes.
make a commitment to it. But in terms of how we get there, while the United Way is supportive, permanent community space, permanent not below market value space is not something, while you support organizations, that's not something you can pick up, is it?
It is not something we can pick up, but we have supported the building of 7 community hubs across the city in some of our communities where we do support some of the core operating costs. And for agencies across our city, we do also support those core operating costs, which includes rent to be able to maintain their space.
Okay, so once, if they can find it, and we can do below market rent, you can help to make sure they're viable and sustainable.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you. Questions of staff? Seeing none, speakers? Councillor Carroll, be happy to move the recommendations? Councillor Carroll's moved the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item, 8.5, resourcing the Regent Park Social Development Plan. We have a number of speakers. Our first speaker is Brent Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell? Brent Mitchell? Oh, there he's hiding. Good morning. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
You have 5 minutes.
Good morning, councillors. I'm Brent Mitchell, VP of Programs and Community Development at Yonge Street Mission. I'm here to speak in support of the Social Development Plan by the city. Yonge Street Mission has great hopes for the potential of Regent Park Social Development Plan, for it to be an engine for the building of social cohesion across many dimensions of difference in the community, including market and TCH residents. After the refresh of the Regent Park Social Development Plan, or SDP, last winter, Yonge Street Mission has aligned its community development work with the goals and categories of the SDP. We believe that by placing our resources and commitment into this initiative, we can most effectively work in collaboration to build up a strong and vibrant, revitalized community. The SDP brings people together: residents, agencies, grassroots groups, institutions, local businesses, and the city. A key linchpin in releasing the potential energy of these groups that have been brought together so far is the allocation of funding to implement the many ideas that have come forward to date. We strongly support the funding request that has been made today. Financial support for Regent Park's Social Development Plan is crucial for fostering the best conditions possible for this project to achieve success. The physical side of the whole revitalization, phases 1 through 5, is currently projected to cost upwards of $1 billion. The social side also requires detailed attention and funding. This has been lacking in previous phases, and we hope that this lack will be remedied moving forward. If the city demonstrates its financial commitment to the social revitalization of Regent Park, we believe this will encourage other funding and investors. Regent Park has gone through a tremendous disruption over the last 10 or more years. Longtime residents have had to move, some never to return. Many new residents have arrived, and many displaced residents have returned. The social fabric has been stressed and torn, and this has left an inevitable mark on the community. A new one is being knitted together. However, it will take time, care, and resources to ensure that it is strong enough to bind together people who were, until recently, strangers. Part of this ongoing knitting together is a refresh of the SDP, which provides a framework by which to move forward the work over time. It has led to a renewed coming together of many entities and people across the neighborhood. We see this continually and very dramatically. Many threads weave together into this complex approach to the complex problem of building up the community during the disruption of revitalization. The proposed actions have emerged from a community process over the last 2 years that has engaged hundreds of residents with support of local agencies and organizations. The focus areas identified by residents are safety, employment and economic development, community building and communications, all seeking to achieve social cohesion. Each of these tables has 3 co-chairs, one a resident of Toronto Community Housing, another a resident of Market Housing, and a third is a staff from a local agency. The actions proposed by each group will work not only each on their own, but also in concert to improve quality of life in Regent Park. The central body bringing together the work of the 4 separate groups is the stakeholders table. Through this body, composed of residents and agencies, a funding committee has been established that will identify potential funding available to the community and advocate for a strong community voice and structure of that funding. As well as benchmarks and evaluation committee has begun meeting to ensure that meaningful progress for tracking and evaluation outcomes are put in place. Accountability and transparency is a very high value in the community at this time. Every community partner has a stake in the SDP, including the Regent Park Executive Directors Network, of which Yonge Street Mission is an active member. Across the neighborhood, agencies have taken a collective approach to support the SDP as decision makers working within the community. The EDs recognize that this plan will offer Regent Park long-lasting positive change. The initial lack of city support to the SDP encouraged the network to speak to this issue to the city for greater action and funding in April. By investing in the SDP, the city is showing true commitment to listening to community members and to support opportunities for residents to build their own capacity in order to improve employment, economic development opportunities, safety, community building, and communications flow. Much attention is being paid within the city, nationally and internationally, to the evolution.
Please wrap up, Brent. You're out of time. Please wrap up.
Regent Park revitalization, and we encourage the city to contribute to its success.
Thank you, Brent. Questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Our next speaker, Deanie Peters. Good morning, Ms. Peters. Welcome.
Thank
You
you.
have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. I have a memory to share with all of you, as the words were shocking and the resulting experience has been difficult to watch unfold. What I heard was there's no new money that can be provided by the city. You will have to leverage the resources you have in different ways. As my heart broke, I looked at the finalized version of the original SDP, which contained 75 recommendations, informed by the residents who gave hours upon hours of their time in hope that the quality of their lives and their community would be improved, that mixed income and mixed-use transformation would be beneficial for all residents, that opportunities for advancement of the TCHC residents would be plentiful, and new relationships could be formed through the shared sense of belonging and willingness to identify as neighbors. Understanding that change in their social interactions and community culture, if not managed well and with the utmost care, would make unity among Toronto community housing and private market residents next to impossible to achieve. No new money to do so much more, with resource gaps unaddressed and unmet needs that extended the provision of available funding. It was incomprehensible. And for more than a decade, the community has been trying to implement an extensive social development plan without sufficient financial investment. Progress has come at a cost, as resources that did not exist could certainly not be leveraged. Progress was slow, and it has been hard to mobilize disappointed, discouraged residents, which has made their engagement a priority of immense difficulty because the social economic issues that they had experienced when Regent Park's redevelopment began have not only continued to cause hardship and distress, but has worsened as the cost of living in Toronto grew increasingly more unaffordable. Social development is not about having a good time, it's about living a good life. The Regent Park community was never about physical structures. It was always about enabling people to have meaningful connections within a welcoming, healthy, safe social environment that they want to live in and call their home. It's about people, not places. However, the window of opportunity is opened. There is not a mere flicker, but a mighty flame of hope that this time the city will properly and provide the funding to address issues of safety that prevents residents from having a sense of well-being in their neighborhood, that keeps them from having a sense of peace and security as they walk anywhere in the community at any time of the night or day. Because without safety, there can be no progressive implementation of social development in Regent Park. If people are afraid, there can be no community building, and the best efforts to communicate will fail if residents feel it's too dangerous to leave their homes and won't allow their children to play outside or their youth to hang out with their friends for fear that they may be shot or stabbed. Indeed, a major investment in safety will have a positive ripple effect to facilitate the forward advancement of the other 3 priority action plans as well. I attended a consultation in which this question was asked: what more can the city do to address gun violence among youth? My answer is to invest real money in practical, preventative, proactive, and progressive community-identified safety initiatives. Regent Park has a safety plan. What Regent Park doesn't have is funding that's required to carry out this plan. But you can do something tangible in the 2020 budget to correct this error that has clearly had a negative impact on social development by expecting the community to implement the plan without proper financing. This was unfeasible and unreasonable and unrealistic then, and it's unfeasible and unrealistic now.
You please wrap up.
Thankfully, we have another decade ahead of us to get your support, and we can do so much more if we have the financing we need to carry out the work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming down today. Our next speaker, Diana Mavendus. Diana? She's on her way? Okay, we'll skip over that. Sarah Jane Grow?
She's not able to attend right now.
Oh, is she coming down, do you know? It'll be too late. Okay. Mary Ann Scott? Mary Ann Scott? That's good.
So this is Salam. They're actually on the docket. So Salam Tesfa and Tishan.
Okay.
I'll let them speak first.
Good morning, welcome.
Is on? Okay.
Is the light on?
Yeah, it is.
You're good. You're
Good morning, guys.
Good morning. My name is Salem, and we are here to talk about the resourcing of the Regent Park Social Development Plan and how having sports teams would benefit the youth and create social inclusion throughout Regent Park.
Hi, my name is Tesla, and if sports teams were created in Regent Park, it would give us a sense of belonging. It would teach us to work together through sport. Have official sports teams representing Regent Park would bring together the whole community, the young, the old, the aged, and in between. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Tishan, and I'm here to support of the social development plan and would like to see Regent Park have its own football team. Things would keep us engaged, would in a safe way and keep us keep us in our community instead of having to travel away to play football. Through sports, we can bring together our community and communities around us, such as Bleecker and Moss Park. That's all.
Let's get a mic here. Good morning. My name is Marianne Scott. And Creating sports teams in Regent Park would ensure social inclusion and social cohesion among residents. The actions of the social development plan include employment, safety, community building, and communication. I feel that the creation of sports teams covers all areas of the SDP. Safety is a main one for us in Regent Park. And if you are not aware, Regent Park is split down the middle, creating North and South Regent Park. Because of this distinction also brought with it a rift that continues to this day and is one of the reasons contributing to gang violence in Regent Park. Through sport, we will see youth coming together as one Regent Park, creating a safer environment for our children and for the residents of Regent Park. It will create job opportunities for young people in coaching, training, and administration. I don't want us to forget Tyson Bailey, who was gunned down on January 18, 2013. He was just 15 years old. He was an avid football player who had big dreams to play pro football. And Makai Jackson was also 15 years old, gunned down on September 25th of last year, who loved basketball and was quite good at it. It's critical to create an environment where young people can thrive through sport and community and feel that they are part of the community and that they can do good and create positive outcomes in their community. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Carroll?
Yeah, I noticed that the proposal for the sports leagues is that they get started, but they'll be run by youth, which it seems to me creates a bit of impediment to them operating in competition with other leagues, you know, provincial associations and things like that. Do we mean youth in some of the leadership roles, but there would be a legitimate league established, and there would be some adult admin that connects with other leagues in the area?
Oh, definitely. We have older youth in the community who are able to coach, and we also have older youth in the community who are able to provide the training, and they would obviously oversee these teams and make sure that they run smoothly.
Okay.
Definitely.
And is there a, because we had leagues where they were funded by the city years ago in North York. I'm in North York Council,
Yes.
that's why I ask. And what ended it, what ended Parks and Rec funding it was that it was costing them a fortune in busing. There are a lot of sports leagues, and the parents have to find a way to get them there, whether by transit or by car or whatever. We were trying to run a league, and anytime they were competing with someone else, we were paying for busing. Is there a parent buy-in here, or would that be so that they're really engaged in getting the sports league going? Or would that be one of the things that is done with these development funds, getting parents to back their kids being involved?
Right. Well, we definitely need and encourage parent support. And I know the number of parents who are fully engaged in this process and would be willing to engage themselves in whatever means necessary. And I know with sports teams, as I've been doing my research, that busing is one of the main, takes a lot of money, is one of the main concerns for busing teams throughout the city. So yes, I mean, we would need funding for that too, but we would also hopefully look to the community and to parents to help us out with that.
Okay, thanks. Those are my questions.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming down today. You're all awesome. Marianne, you're awesome, but special shout out to our youth that came down today. You guys are tremendously awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Tessa Scott.
They already spoke.
Oh, okay, Tessa, no, sorry, I was hard here. And Tyshawn Kent, he spoke? Yep. And Judith Blackman. Yep, those were three?
Yes.
Got them all, okay. Dayton Blackman?
No, not here.
Not coming? Okay. Miguel Alvia Bernard? Good morning, welcome.
Good morning.
You have 5
How are you,
minutes, thank you.
everybody? How was the rain today, coming to work? Look at these people behind me. They have made a great sacrifice to be here today to represent Regent Park needs and priorities. I want to thank every speaker for saying the things that need to be said today, so you understand how important it is to invest in the social development plan for Regent Park. I want to make a comment regarding employment. I think it's a great initiative that we are going to be hiring people from the community, and we're going to train them to work in the condominium buildings as a security guards, as a building maintenance staff. That is a great priority for many residents who suffer the lack of employment. I think it's a realistic plan. I hope that everybody here at this table can support this. Too bad Michael Ford just left the meeting. I just wanted to address a very particular item with relation to Toronto community housing. The 4 pillars of the SDFP address communications down at the bottom. We have a plan for communications. It will be carried by the Regent Park Focus TV, a very important program that helps youth to learn the techniques of journalism, recording, video, audio recording. It is a great program. I have been in this location. They have access to a community channel through Rogers Communications, channel 991. So the channel 991 does not have the strength enough to carry this programming on Rogers Cable. It's not accessible to every single building of Regent Park. They had told us that depends if you are closer to the building to where we are transmitting the signal, you will able to see it, but the channel. But I have tested 220 Oak Street, which is also part of the Regent Park community, but it's not part of the revitalization. We don't have access to the channel 991, which is a free channel provided by Rogers Communications, but without improving the technology, the delivery of technology, we won't be able to see the channel in the old buildings. I know that the brand new buildings have access to Bell Hi-Fi, the new fiber optical channel cable, but in the old buildings, they have tried to install the Bell Hi-Fi, but it has been a very incredible work to do it because they had to drill so many holes. It's very costly, in other words. So that's my 2 pieces for today. I want you to support the recommendations and approve today so we can move forward to the next level, the executive committee, where Mayor Tory will be in attendance, and moving forward to City Council and get it done, please, for the youth.
Thank you,
That's all my
Miguel.
recommendations.
Thank you, Miguel. Questions? See none. Thank you, sir. Our next speaker, Ismail Afra. Good morning, Ismail. Good morning. Welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, council members. We're here today to discuss the Regent Park Social Development Plan. I remember starting work in Regent Park about a year and a half ago, and the first work I did was in terms of access to recreation. And I know many of you remember my face when we talked about the challenges of residents having problems with access to recreational facilities. And we've moved the ball on that front. This committee helped us fund a local swim program through those efforts, and we're making what they call good progress on that front. But I wanted to put a context into what the social development plan means to our neighborhood. The social development plan is the plan that brings everything together. It's the plan that that was first initially developed because revitalization was seen to be a two-step process. One where physical development happens, and about $1 billion has been spent on the physical side. And we also know that only physical development is not sufficient for revitalization. A social development plan was also incorporated. And that plan, so far, not enough money has went into supporting that. We are a community of stakeholders. So in this table, we have agencies, we have residents, we have business people, and we have developers. And we also have city divisions. I remember reading the TSN 2020 strategy that was developed by the city, and it talked about 3 goals. The first goal was activating people. The second goal was activating resources. And the third one was activating neighborhood-friendly policies. I think through revitalization, you've succeeded in activating people. There are about 13 to 15 grassroots groups that are working on important projects. So for instance, if you look at the Globe and Mail today, there's a group that's working on trees and plants and making sure that that's done well. There's the group of Access to Recreation that's working on recreation access. And there's also a community building animation. So a lot of grassroots groups are working to improve our neighborhood. And the most important element of that is the second part, where it is activating resources. So we need the city to activate its resources to support our neighborhood. The ask is $500,000 a year for 5 years. If you look at the scope of the impact you're having, it's great. I wanted to say a few words from a friend of mine who couldn't be here today, and he sent me a note of what he would like to say in this committee as well. My friend, his name is Marwan Kogali. He is a social enterprise. He's an entrepreneur. He started a business at the Artscape Spectrum. It's a community building that was designed in phase 2 of the development. Because of the relationship he's had with the organization, they've been able to give him an opportunity to hire locally. My brother was hired as a security guard through him in that space. The community building space is sort of we are the front-facing employees at the building, and a lot of employment opportunities came through there. I started working at that building initially as well. And what he says is that it's not enough to build buildings. You need to invest in terms of employment. His next step is to create a social enterprise where he hires security, he trains them, he mentors them, and and then using the new built facilities in the neighborhood, actually hire them. This plan of his will cost money, and that's one of the action items that's in the employment category. Also, I remember I also sit at the community building table, and there we're talking about how do we transform the neighborhood spaces. Regent Park has a lot of community spaces. One of our goals is to survey all the community spaces and try and figure out a local access program, because many of these spaces are closed off after hours and not available during weekends. So the community building working group is working what steps needs to be in place. Does insurance need to be in place? Does training and security guards need to be in place? So the plan is comprehensive. There's about 4 different work areas: communication, employment, safety, and community building. And so what we need from you is to stay true to your TSN 2020 goal, which is to activate people. You've done that. Now we need you to activate resources to support the social development plan in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamil. Appreciate it. Questions? Councilor Wong-Tam?
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for the deputation. With respect to the activation and pulling the resources together, is your understanding that one of the big outcomes of this report is to actually coordinate both the activated individuals and community organizations, but also to make sure that the resources are coordinated so that there's no duplication, but you can also leverage out those resources?
Yes, so some of the ambitious thing about this plan is that we want to be able to centralize and coordinate the different activities. So all the different 4 working groups, as it has been said, residents, agencies, we sit together in a planning table and discuss where impact could be made, so we don't duplicate resources and that we're intentional about some of the outcomes we want. The reason why I was part of the local champions in the TSN 2020, and part of I've surveyed all the different neighborhood tables. And one of the successful things about it is that a true table is where all the stakeholders sit together and plan. And I think we want to create that model where all what they call as staff, city staff sits with us in the planning table, and we make sure that whatever outcome we want is intentional, and we coordinate efforts.
So would you say that without the strategy that's contained in the report, without the coordination from the city, that's going to be led from the city, but also co-led by the community, the revitalization of Regent Park, even as we move into 4 and 5 and we get to the completion, without this critical component, the revitalization will not be successful without this. Is this correct?
Yes, I've been hired at a local agency, and the first thing we did was, my position is called social development. I've looked at the old SDP plan. 75 recommendations came through that. A lot of efforts went in through coming up with recommendations. And the reason why there was a lot of success on the agency part, because they were always carrying out social development, but there was not enough collaborative energies. And I think in many ways, the reason why there's not collaborative energies was because the structures were not there. So one of the first fixes we did in this refreshed SDP was to create a strong governance structure where is a true collaboration happens at the table, so that you have executive directors from the neighborhood sit with the local residents in the same table and bring in city divisions, and all of us negotiate, have strong conversations about important matters like how to create more accessible space. And all that stuff would be null if there's not financial support for that table. And that's why it's really essential. And I think that people who, you have a lot of thinkers in the city, and I think strategies are important, but strategies are not implemented with the right resources. The whole revitalization effort will be new shiny buildings without real social development.
Right. Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Councillor Carroll.
Yeah, you spoke about wanting community spaces to be open extended hours and even on weekends. What is on offer for people during the weekend hours in Regent Park?
So luckily, in terms of like the Artscape building I talked about, because it's run by community members who do the security there, there's a lot of informal activation that happens. Trust has already built, but in terms of formal spaces, it's very difficult. The recreational center does run during Saturdays and Sundays, and we're working towards increasing more opportunities formally.
Okay, and is there a youth space in the community center? I can't remember.
Yes, there are youth spaces in the community center, and luckily we have some of the staff that are in these spaces have a long history in the neighborhood, so they do recognize the need to open up these spaces for youth.
And do they have restricted hours?
So in terms of the level of support, especially on the Sundays and Saturdays, there is restriction around the operations. But that's the reason why we need them at the table is to change some of those data. And because of the structure we've created for the SDP, we bring in all the key stakeholders in so that it's transformational. So it's not all about we want to support youth. What actual steps do we take to support youth? Mm-hmm. And that's why supporting some of these action priorities is essential. Because if you don't support some of these action priorities, what ends up happening is we talk about youth and we support them abstractly, but on the ground at a neighborhood level, that support doesn't exist.
Right, right. So if there's a youth space in there, if that youth space door was unlocked anytime the community center door was unlocked, we'd have a different program entirely, right?
Yes, we would. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, thanks for coming down today. Thank you. Questions of staff. Councillor Wong Tam.
Yes, thank you very much for the report. And just with respect to the quantum that's being proposed in this report, the first year going out is 500,000.
Councillor Wong Tam, sorry, can I just hold you 1 sec? I think one of the deputies just showed up that wanted to speak, if that's okay.
Oh, yes, of course.
Was Diana? Hi, Diana. Diana, please come forward. Welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Do I praise? Okay, it's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, especially to the committee for allowing us to speak on behalf of the stakeholders table in Regent Park. My name is Diana Mavundusa, and I work with Dixon Hall Neighborhood Services, and I'm the Community Development Coordinator for Dixon Hall. As you know, maybe some of you, Dixon Hall has been in Regent Park since 1929, and we've been providing services and working with residents throughout the history of the Regent Park revitalization process. But again, maybe just to allow me to take you back into the history of Regent Park, of the revitalization. The first revitalization took place in 1948, 1960, when Regent Park was made into a garden city that is now being demolished currently. The garden city was Toronto's first big experiment in public housing. As years went by, the building started to show stress, living conditions for residents were deteriorating, and I'm not sure whether to say the garden city experiment was a flop, but I'll leave that for you to decide. Unlike the first revitalization, the second revitalization was pushed by the residents of Regent Park to take place. In 1995, a group of residents came to the city council and asked and organized meetings and engaging local agencies to support their advocacy for better living conditions in Regent Park. And in 2007, City Council passed the social development plan developed by the residents. And in this second revitalization that we are currently in, it was noted that the physical development plan could not just go on its own. It had to go together with the social development plan. And the goal of the social development plan, just to remind you again, is social inclusion and cohesive, and to create a socially inclusive and a cohesive Regent Park. That's the goal of the revitalization process. And after the whole revitalization process, the residential units in Regent Park will be 70% market units and 30% TCHC units. Remember, it was 100% social housing, and then the ratio will be 70 to 30. Like the first revitalization of the Garden City model, Regent Park, again, is the first pilot of several social engineering projects that TCHC is undertaking. This pilot has gained international recognition. Regent Park has played host to people coming from cities such as Johannesburg in South Africa and the City of London, to name a few. Many of these research and documents have been published about this revitalization process that we're doing, because it's something unique that the City of Toronto and TCHC is undertaking. The Regent Park Social Development Plan, and in the Social Development Plan, residents identified 4 areas that are key ingredients to achieving the goal of an inclusive and a cohesive community. And the 4 areas are safety, community building, employment, and communication. And I believe the previous speaker spoke about that in detail. The Regent Park Social Development Stakeholders Table is made up of all stakeholders, which includes all the various city divisions, 3 levels of government, TCHC, TDSB, service providers, grassroots groups, the residents, both TCHC and market residents. The private developer is also part of the stakeholders table. And all of us are major stakeholders of the social development plan. But I've always asked myself a question as we sit together at that table. If we fail to achieve the goal of a socially inclusive and cohesive community, who is to blame? Is it the city? Is it TCHC? Is it the residents? Or is it the service providers? Or is it all of us stakeholders sitting at that table together? And again, so unlike the Garden City model, where it was just a city project run by city, this current revitalization process is an inclusive process. And we want to make sure it's a cohesive process too. And for that to happen, investing and providing financial resources in the social development plan in Regent Park is very crucial if we are to achieve the goal of a socially inclusive and cohesive community. By the way, we are creating community, and community is just not buildings, it is people. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to say thank you, and I hope that you take all this into consideration as you make your decisions.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing none, thank you. I think, do we have another speaker? No? Okay, bring into committee now. Sorry, Councilor Wong-Tam, questions to staff.
Yes, thank you very much. With respect to the revitalization of Regent Park, the history goes back, I mean, obviously last speaker spoke to it, but the SDB plan originally was adopted, or sorry, the revitalization efforts were originally approved in 2007, is that correct? And when did the first building come down? Do you recall?
Sorry, through the chair, can you repeat that question?
When did the first building come down?
believe the first buildings came down within 18 months of the approval.
The approval. And during that entire process, we've been seeing the rollout as old buildings come down, new buildings go up, residents move in, new facilities go in. But the SDP plan, the original one, when was that created?
Through the chair, that was created in 2007.
That was 2007. And was there any funding attached to that?
No, there was not funding attached to that.
And the SDP plan was supposed to do the coordination, was supposed to bring in those resources to bring in cohesion and inclusion. Why did it take so long for this report to arrive today?
That's a very good question. I think the intention of the original plan was to look at not only coordination, but also have a framework as being spoken today, and 75 recommendations that all partners could act on. The learning is that there needs to be a strong leadership by the city and a framework, not only a framework, but an investment in the specific actions. And those 75 recommendations, a lot of them were larger vision statements, and with the update and refresh of the social development plan, which was originally meant to be a living document, we have more specific actions and actions that can be resourced.
And so, knowing that the SDP plan has now gone through a refresh, realizing that there's now a budget allocation that's going to go ahead in the 2020 budget, You've now streamlined the ambitions. You've coordinated what the community has wanted. You've gone back and touched the various stakeholder tables to talk about how to align, how to leverage the resources, how to make sure that you're not duplicating. Do we have the very best strategy now moving forward, especially if it's to fund the SDP plan through the refresh, but also the money that we need to get it done?
Through the chair, I believe that we are working with partners to develop this strategy to be a reflection of the needs of the residents and other stakeholders, and primarily work to invest in specific actions that will result in inclusion, as partners have spoken about, and cohesion of residents as Regent Park grows.
Okay, and then my final question is that there's already some money on the table, so it's not that we're coming in with the only check in hand.
Yep.
Can you talk about the money that's already in the pool here?
Yes. So through the chair, there has been a donation by Chris Berlinger, former of SDFA, of $250,000. There is also funds that have been redirected specifically through the social development plan from our community funding unit that equals $150,000 over 2 years. And we are also working with the United Way and their social innovation fund to have further coordination through the social development plan framework. And we are working with the community residents that are a part of the Legacy Fund Committee to align with the stakeholders table and have the funding that's available each year through the Legacy Fund also connect to the framework of the social development plan.
Great, and that total is $1.408 million. Okay, thank you.
Correct, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher, the question.
Yes, I'm wondering, since the beginning, can you tell me how many full-time permanent jobs have been created in Regent Park?
Through this chair, we don't have that information at this time.
Will you have that for council?
Yes, we can have that information.
So you don't track job creation?
Through the chair, originally, through the development of the social development plan, we were working with community partners, agencies, and our partners in employment and social service. The refresh of the social development plan meant that those initiatives over that 10-year period did not maintain the same level of monitoring, and we were looking at refreshing the social development plan to also refresh the way that we monitor and implement these strategies.
So you just said over 10 years, right? Did I hear you say that correctly?
Yes.
So what was the total investment over the 10 years, dollar-wise, for partners, that you gave to partners for job creation?
We do not have that information at this time, but for, specifically through the social development plan, there was no investment.
You just said that others were carrying out the plan, and you didn't have oversight over the job creation numbers that they may have achieved.
Those,
Or maybe I heard that wrong.
through the chair, those investments would have been made in kind from employment service providers and in coordination with the developer at the time.
But TCHC also had relationships and plans for job creation, did they not? Are you not reporting on that as well? Or are you only reporting on SDFA? Because isn't the city not the service manager, including for the revitalization?
Through the chair, yes, and to my understanding that the coordination of the employment initiatives included TCH, and we can get those numbers in terms of what was invested through TCH as well as the other partners over that period.
So I'm looking for how much was invested by TCH and by the other partners, in what form. You can't tell me how many dollars or what the contracts were that would have required hiring at this point. Am I right?
Correct.
And you can't tell me how many jobs have been created over the 10 years, and I don't mean summer work, I mean permanent jobs or job training. You can't tell me that either.
Yes, not at this point.
So how are we refreshing if we don't know what we've done?
So part of the process and the initiative to refresh the social development plan was to identify and monitor and implement specific actions. The challenge of the 2007 plan that identified 75 recommendations was actually moving from those recommendations to specific actions. And that was a challenge all the way through that process. The refresh of the social development plan presents actions that are specifically from community partners, including local residents, actions to be implemented and monitored, and actions with a cost attached.
So if I ask you to provide between now and council, very clear what TCHC did, what the contracts were with Daniels and everyone else as far as requirements for job creation. There's requirements for job creation, and then there's let's have jobs. And you're able to tell me, here's the number of jobs that were created, and here's the number of full-time jobs that were created for Regent Park, for the redevelopment. You think you can do that?
Through the chair, we will consult with TCH and all relevant partners as to the investments that they've made from 2007 to date.
And does it worry you at all that for a social development approach that jobs aren't the cornerstone in a poverty, in a community with 2,000 RGI households?
Through the chair, we
Number
agree.
one?
Through the chair, we agree that jobs are a cornerstone, and as partners have identified, it's employment and economic opportunities, as well as community building, communication, and community safety that are keys that are identified by the community in Regent Park.
Thank you.
Yes, so the prioritized actions, and I'm looking at table 1 in the report. And in the table 1, what I see is that we're going to be mapping youth programming, but I don't see the sports programming. Is that in a later bundle, or what's the plan?
Through the chair, the plan in the development of these actions, community partners have identified that they need as much information as possible. They need to inform all plans, whether economic or whether building of leagues with information and going out to the community. So part of assessing existing programs is to look at what exists and where there are further gaps, and to have an effective plan to address those gaps, as well to engage youth in the process of not only identifying the gaps, but coming up with the solutions for those gaps.
So the initial, if it goes through as requested here, if it got through the budget process, in the initial years, you'd simply be developing a sports plan and possibly honing it.
Through the chair, agreed, but we'd also take the opportunity to be developing skills, coaching skills, as well as identifying mentors, identifying the specific types of leagues that the youth in the community were looking at developing and having operating in Regent Park for Regent Park youth.
Okay, so the question is, and I get that because that's from the perspective of the youth users, but has there been an equity lens put on it, a gap lens put on it? The reason I ask this question is I'm wondering if you could speak to equity with the rest of the community, because there are other, I know that Regent Park is somewhat unique given its history, but it's not the only revitalization area, and it's not the only neighborhood improvement area. And we aren't in the business of running leagues. We don't do competitive leagues through Parks and Rec. There are lots of leagues that use our spaces and use school board spaces, but we don't run leagues or manage leagues. So is this to get to the point where they can attract a league in the way that they exist in the city, or are we starting something here that doesn't exist elsewhere?
Through the chair, the intention of the action is to research as well as create opportunities for skill development and develop leagues that are identified by residents. We're also in the process of working with other funder partners, other community partners. The intention is for this league to be run, or any leagues to be run through Regent Park by Regent Park residents, not as a specific program of the City of Toronto, but as a partnership in the community, specifically supporting youth development for residents of Regent Park.
So if we seed this, it's not that we're taking on competitive leagues inside the parks. If we seed this to begin with, what we could be doing is helping them develop a league that then joins the ranks of, in football and basketball across the city, OBA leagues and the counterpart in football. So they would join those ranks, but we would have seeded it from within, and then it becomes a league of its own.
Agreed.
I see, okay. And the same with just quickly, because I only have a minute left, the same with the communications model, looking at having a cable television statement. Does that start with an initial review? Because that isn't actually that isn't actually the main place that people would go for local news. I mean, have we looked at cable station versus podcast and all that sort of thing? Has that been updated?
Through the chair, I believe the overall action is to look at the existing programs that through Regent Park TV and to enhance those programs. So there's also components of skill development, as well as an opportunity for residents to be more actively part of media in their community, developing media, sharing media, connecting to other media across the city.
Oh, okay, so we'd listen to them as to what is the best media to be using. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, Councillor Wong-Tam to speak.
Yes, thank you very much. I wanted to just thank the staff for this report, and I recognize that it was very important for the report to come out in the way that it has, and I'm really glad about the time. When I first became the new councillor of this new amalgamated Ward 13 Toronto Centre, one of the first meetings I had early on was to sit down with TCHC to understand what were their plans for the Regent Park revitalization. And I recognize that, we're building upon years of advocacy and community engagement, and as well as the previous councillor's advocacy. But there was some confusion about where the people investments were going. And then we had some community meetings with the local stakeholders, many of them who spoke so eloquently today and passionately about what they needed for their communities to be successful. And they started talking about a social development plan. And interestingly enough, that social development plan was not brought up in my first meeting, my first sit-down meeting with TCHC. They talked about the building, they talked about the development process, but it was actually the local community that said there's this thing called the SDP, and it's sort of not, it's supposed to guide us, but it's not in action. And I think that the community has really come together over the past year to just think about what does this refresh look like. And the reason they need to refresh it was because a document that was created in 2007 needed to go through a rethinking, especially as you were going to streamline and prioritize and pull out the pieces that had to be actioned right away. And that was an exercise that has now taken place. It's an exercise where the city came to the table because there was a coordinator there that helped pull it together. The local stakeholders and all the various community organizations were there, and the resident leaders were all at the table doing this work together. So I'm very confident that we now have a strategy that has actually prioritized the needs of the community in terms of the 19 actions that need to go forward, based on pulling it apart from the 53 actions that were also identified. And they're leveraging community strengths and dollars that are already in place, and that's the 1.4 million plus that's already embedded in the community that needs to be spent. Things that we've learned, and I think this is important, is that without an evaluation framework, without a template, without a driver in the seat, this will not go forward, and that's largely what's been missing. So when I sat down with Chris Brillinger, while he was still here as our SDFA general manager, I asked him, who owns the SDP? Who is responsible for the funding of this document, this action plan for the community? And is it TCHC? Is it Daniels? Is it the local community of residents? Is it the city? And he said unequivocally, it is the city. So now that the city is here at the table, and we've always been, but now that we're here with funding and money and a strategy and an accountability table that's going to make it all happen by leadership in the community that's going to drive this forward, I think that we're going to be a better place moving into phases 4 and 5 revitalization. And it's really important that the community has been before our committee, before this committee, on a few occasions now this year. One, when they were asking for better access to Regent Park athletic facilities. They've been here talking about the need for the SDP plan. It was originally tabled, saying let's get this start going again. And the community has shown up once again. Every time they need to come out to advocate for themselves and for the needs of the larger neighborhood, they have done so. And I think that when they speak with a lot of eloquence, they speak with a lot of intelligence, and they also speak with very clear direction. They know where they need to go, but they need us at the table. And so that's what this now represents. This represents the closing of the gap. We are going to be, I hope, obviously funding this strategy, but also making sure that we work with them to measure those outcomes. So as Councillor Fletcher was asking her questions about how many full-time jobs were created, how much money was on the table before, the questions that Councillor Fletcher has asked, I know that Councillor McConnell has asked, and I know that these are questions that the community has also been asking. How do we know that things are getting better? And unless there's a way to measure the betterment, it's going to be very hard to document. So if you don't know where if you don't know where you are, it's very hard to know whether or not you've made progress in the years ahead. So the measurements have to be in the lines of jobs, in terms of the social determinants of health and safety. Community resiliency, I think, is also on the table. All of that has to be done, and I'm really proud that it will be co-led, co-created with the community, and I'm very proud that this report is here today. And I just want to thank staff and the deputants and this committee for the indulgence to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher to speak.
Yes, I don't know if it's ready, but I am going to move that motion. And if it's not, I'll ask your indulgence, Mr. Chair, to put it up later. or
sec, one
speak.
sec.
Oh, sorry, the chair is going to move that for me. So we'll come to that. I'll speak to it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Here it is. Basically, I would like to know about the amount of investment and full and part-time jobs. Basically, the ROI on all of the work that's been done there. And I understand social investment and safety and everything else, but this is a community, as we know, there are 2,000 homes, and every single one of them is rent geared to income. So people need jobs, they need help, we need a strategy. And the revitalizations, I'm very pleased to see this because revitalization has too often meant revitalizing the bricks and the mortar, the beautiful public realm discussions, the streets discussions, what the front door is going to look like discussion, but how the community can be transformed and how people can use this moment to transform their lives is something that I don't think we've ever gone deep enough and need to go there. And this is the Rivertown, this is Regent Park. I have Rivertown next to it, and I can tell you for sure, as people tell me, well, that was the first one, so we made all our mistakes there. I will be asking the same thing for all of our revitalizations to make sure that it's not just about bricks and mortar. And I'm very respectful of all, however many things there are on that list, Councillor Wong-Tam. I don't know if you said 19, but, 53. To me, number one is job training, job readiness, assistance with jobs. And I'm going to go back to one of the problems that I identify regularly, which is hard for us to fix. And that is for the city to be actively involved with job seekers, they have to be on OW. They have to be on Ontario Works. That's our mandate. But there are so many young people, many others in our communities in TCHC that are working. They're young, they're 20, they're 21. They are working 1, 2, and 3 jobs. They are not in that basket because they're not part of OW. This is a strategy we have to grapple with, how we're going to meet the needs of those go-getters to get more training, to get ahead. And I know Chief Pegg is here. Is he here? Yes. So just looking at the case of a young man almost ready to be a firefighter, but he couldn't afford the DZ. There's all kinds of kids that can't get that license, $600 or whatever it costs. We need to make strategic investments in people in order for them to move ahead with really simple kinds of things. If you go online and you see how many people are required, how many drivers are being looked for with specialty licenses, there's a lot. What's our strategy? So if I sound a little frustrated, it's because this is now however many years out, 10, 12 years out, and we didn't measure anything. What we didn't measure. We didn't measure the most important thing. It's kind of, well, everybody's doing their thing, getting money, no measurement. So I think we have to recalibrate this and be very sharp on what we're delivering and what the outcome is and how we can help bridge people that are talented, want to do things, and need a little bit of help, because those are the people that are falling through the cracks in a big way.
Thank you. Last speaker, Councillor Thompson. Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor.
Okay. Well, I'm supportive of the report, but I get the added advantage of being there when this goes through the budget process, and I kind of flagged it in my questions. I'll be looking for a little more detail in the item by item of these as they go through the budget process. I don't know if the plan is to just for SDF&A to say $500,000, please, and the details will be point form like this, or we'll really see them going into the divisions they'll be in. I don't know what the plan is for presenting this as a budget request, but I'm going to be looking at this with the equity lens on it, because while it is big and it is unique, it is not the only. And so we're talking about setting up programs that won't be available to the Villaways, they won't be available to Allenbury Gardens, and they won't be available to Lawrence Heights. So if they work, that's great. That means we have a whole bunch of other places we need to make them available to. So I'll be looking for budget requests when this comes to budget that really makes clear almost terms of reference that if we're going to seed these activities, it really is seeding these activities. And 5 years from now, it is hoped that the plan will be that they are sustainable or have other partners by then, because we have a long queue of neighborhoods that, due to the disruption of relocation, coming back to a neighborhood that seems shuffled and not my own, all need this. All need this. I asked my specific questions about the sports program because that inequity goes beyond TCHC developments. There are moms living in deep poverty who, if they've got a kid who's sports talented, are going without their meal to feed the sports talented kid and pay for a token to get him to a practice in a league where Canadian Tire Jumpstart is paying for him to even be in the league. And we're not offering leagues, so your welcome letter gets you nowhere if you want to compete and win at a thing. We don't do competition. And learning to commit yourself to something and feel winning in a team is job one if you want to teach kids how to be motivated to get themselves ahead. But we don't do that. We leave it to leagues to do it. And if we're going to set up that this youth gets to do that, then it really has to be a situation of introducing to a community, watching them build a league of their own, and then being able to seed other communities, whether it's social revitalization communities or simply neighborhood improvement areas. We have to get to the point where we're not just providing a youth space that you can sit on a sectional and play PS4 or drop in basketball once a week. A league with brackets and goes to the end of the year and everybody just goes nuts trying to get to winning or placing or anything. They have to get to the point where they're in the network that does that. But unfortunately, at the moment, that's not happening in Parks, Forestry, and Recreation. It's happening in independent associations. So if we're providing these funds to help them develop that ability to run an independent association, yay, but it has to then track on to other neighborhoods. So I'll be looking for those kinds of details in the budget request. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Last speaker, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The questions that were being asked by Councillor Fletcher.
You have a motion?
I'm going to get to that. Thank you. The questions that were being asked by Councillor Fletcher, as it relates to the specific, there is a motion that identifies to the question that she's been asked. A motion, I'll ask the clerk to put the motion on the screen, please. Essentially, it's asking for information to help us to understand whether or not the investment that's actually being made will be successful, because clearly we need to know the impact of jobs and training. And I think the opportunity that we have with organizations like Enterprise Toronto, the work that Tess does in terms of working with individuals and so on, I think it's extremely important. So this is information that the councillor is asking to be brought to council so that we will at least have an understanding as to success. And of course, this will be information that will be captured and will provide through updates. Mr. Chair, I think it's really important in terms of thanking all the residents who actually came out today. I have seen of my time here that the residents and the workers who are helping the residents from Regent Park have been very active and have come in and been very clear with respect to what their goals and objectives are and their intent, as well as the desire to work with the city to affect change and outcome to ensure that the lives of the residents in Regent Park are impacted in a more profound way, as opposed to just being a statistics that is one that requires us to ask the question, well, what are we doing in the community, and why aren't we doing more? And so we have a plan, and of course we want to ensure that it gets measured in order to ensure its success. It's really interesting that there are other neighborhoods in this city that are not necessarily here, and they too need assistance. And I think that we're all working on addressing these concerns that is evident around the community of the City of Toronto. Regent Park is one such area. This is a model that can be utilized in other areas that are in need of investments as well to create opportunities for our residents. So I applaud the residents for their persistence, and I applaud the local councillor as well in terms of her effort and her dedication to steadfastly stand with and provide leadership to the community. And I think that all of us are in support and in sync with respect to ensure that the concerns that we have about the amputation of the spirits, and particularly of communities and young people in our community, is being addressed. Because without the investment, without the leadership, and without a plan, then it's really just another exercise in futility, and that's not where we want to be. I think that there's been enough of that already in the community and beyond, and so I think we want to do more. And I know that some of the plans and work that we're doing with respect to economic development is seeking to address this particular issue right across the City of Toronto so that we don't leave anyone behind. And when we talk about diversity, and diversity being our strength, it also includes inclusion, because it is not just diversity for the sake of saying that we're a diverse community. We're also investing our resources to help and to build, both in terms of economic building, but also social development, and creating an environment where people feel that they are of worth, they're of value, because of the contribution and the collaboration that's taking place and the assistance that's being offered through the resources that are obviously theirs. In fact, they're getting a contribution back in terms of their own community. So I move this report, this motion, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. So the amendment, the motion on the screen, Councillor Thompson on behalf of Councillor Fletcher. All in favor? Opposed? Item is amended. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. So I will go back to 8.1, a presentation of the annual partnership Advanced Youth Employment Pain Leadership Award. I'll pass the chair to the second best chair you'll see today, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you much. Okay, Mr. Vice Chair, and thank you for your leadership this morning. Yes, very tough, absolutely. He follows good examples. And I apologize, I had to attend the great transit announcement that was made by the mayor this morning, and I think we'd all be very proud not only of the mayor's leadership, but of the announcement that was made this morning. Yeah, I did. Do you want it back? Sorry. That's not yours. Okay. All right, so may I just call the meeting to order, please? I know that there are a number of people who are about to leave the room in that our last item has just been dealt with. So members, good morning. I have the great pleasure, in fact, I'm quite delighted to help to present the 5th Annual Pay Leadership Award as we continue to celebrate Workforce Development Month in Toronto. The award recognizes exceptional commitment to the City of Toronto's partnership to advance youth employment program. In 2018, more than 2,500 young people receive support through pay, including one-on-one career coaching, networking, and skill development opportunities. Of these 2,500 youth, some 1,242 secured jobs with some of the city's top employers, and a further 360 were connected to valuable work-based learning opportunities at the City of Toronto and with private and community sector partners. PAY's success is built on the efforts of 3 city divisions: Toronto Employment and Social Services, Economic Development and Culture, Social Development, Finance and Administration. The Outstanding work of these divisions in the area of youth employment connects thousands of talented young job seekers to employment each year. The Pay Leadership Award recognizes individuals and organizations who demonstrate outstanding leadership in innovation and dedicated to increasing access to employment opportunities for youth. Award nominations are carefully evaluated against 3 core principles: impact, influence, and involvement. This year's recipient embraces these 3 core principles and, in fact, adds 2 others: innovation and inspiration. It is my honor to announce that the recipient of the 2018 Pay Leadership Award is Cisco Canada. Big round of applause for Cisco Canada. We are delighted to welcome Willa Black, Cisco Vice President of Corporate Affairs, who has joined us for this occasion. Cisco is recognized as a world leader in creating economic opportunities for youth. Over the past 20 years, Cisco Worldwide has helped millions of students to change their lives by providing access to education, skill training, career mentorship through the Cisco Networking Academy, a pillar of the company's corporate social responsibility platform. Locally, the Cisco Network Academy supports programs such as Empower Canada, a pay partner that yearly provides hundreds of young people with free technology training, paid work placement, and jobs with organizations such as TD, Deloitte, Accenture. Cisco is a founding partner of Empower and one of its champions. The company serves Empower Industry Advisory Table and hosts professional development and networking events that brings young people together with employers, industry professionals, and their peers. A year ago, Cisco participated in the Pay Skills for the Future of Work Symposium, providing 100 youth with information about in-demand technical and foundational skills. And the company played a significant role in the City of Toronto's inaugural Digital Literacy Day in 2018. Just last week, Cisco hosted Pay Black Youth in Tech networking event at their offices overlooking Toronto's waterfronts. An amazing opportunity was provided for 50 aspiring tech professionals. Perhaps most innovative of all is the contribution to youth the company has made, the groundbreaking partnership with the Toronto Public Library. This partnership provides all library card holders with free access to its Cisco Networking Academy program. The Let's Learn Tech program, co-designed by Cisco and TPL, and available at all library branches across the city, provides learners with access to valuable technical skills needed in the current labor market. Cisco continues to provide exemplary leadership and dedication, not only to the Pay program, but to focus on work development in Toronto. And with Willa and her team leading the way, I know the company will continue to have a significant impact on the youth of our city in the years to come. Please again join me in congratulating Cisco Canada for this award. And I know that, Ms. Black, you would like to say a few words before we present you with the award.
Well, I hardly know what to say. I think you've done such a marvelous job, Chair Thompson. Thank you for that generous introduction, and good morning, everyone. What a great pleasure to be here. I want to thank the Partnership to Advance Youth Employment for this wonderful recognition. For those of you who may not know Cisco, just despite that very robust introduction, I'll just take a moment to give you a very quick bit of background. We are the global leader in internet networking, so we develop, we build, we integrate all the hardware and software that makes the internet work. In fact, 85% of all of the world's internet traffic travels over Cisco systems. We are a 35-year-old company based in Silicon Valley, so we have had a front row seat to the highs and lows of the tech revolution from the very epicenter. One thing we know for sure, the technology has changed our world and advanced our economies in ways that we never could have imagined. We've all heard that much repeated data point from The Economist that 65% of children entering primary school will ultimately work in a job that doesn't exist today. That is both exciting and frightening. And as a global tech leader, we passionately believe at Cisco that we have an obligation and a responsibility to help today's youth be as well prepared as possible with the skills that they need to thrive. And so we have worked hard to build programs and IT curriculum, which we offer at no cost, to do just that. In 1997, we did launch the Networking Academy, a broad curriculum of IT training, networking essentials, the Internet of Things, cybersecurity. We partner with colleges and universities in 160 countries and today have over 7 million certified job-ready graduates. In Canada, we have 28,000 students currently enrolled in this program through 212 partner colleges and universities with 211,000 graduates to date, representing a $93 million investment in this country. And so, with this wonderful asset, with this incredible curricula, we've worked hard with partners like NPower in Toronto to make it available to youth from our underserved communities. And we were so proud to bring NPower to Canada in partnership with Accenture in 2015. We're even more proud that since 2015, based on the Cisco Networking Academy program, we've had 1,200 graduates, 87% of whom have secured full-time jobs in Toronto, so that is certainly something to celebrate. We were also so proud to launch the Networking Academy at the Toronto Public Library, reaching a whole new audience with an opportunity to build these much in-demand skills. So we've done some very good things in the past, which is why I'm sitting here today to represent Cisco. But what we're interested in is the future, what's to come, and how we can build on this momentum in the City of Toronto. And so, with the advice and support from PAYE, we'll be looking to bring this skills training into correctional institutions, into community centers. We're looking to scale, to bring creativity and purpose to this effort, because we know that change is a constant, because we have a huge asset with the youth in this city, and because with the commitment of private sector organizations and leaders like Cisco, we can provide the training and support necessary to help our young people build the skills to find the right jobs, the jobs that change lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I'm going to...
Yeah, I'm just going to give this to you because I keep getting people's heads.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It comes with a nice case. Thank you again. Thank you for your patience. All right, members. We are ready to go. Madam Clerk, ready? Okay, we are now moving to, according to my list that the distinguished chair has compiled. Oh, that's right, yes. Motion to receive item 1. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried. Thank you, that's done. We're now moving to EC 8.6, establishing strategic priorities for cultural investment 2020-2024. I have one speaker, Patient Abagaur, I believe. Patience is here. Here we are, yeah. Thank you, Patience, and welcome. You are no stranger to this committee. You have 5 minutes. Let me know when you're ready.
No problem. Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, good morning. Excuse me. So I'll just begin. Toronto's culture and business communities are the prime example of diversity here in Canada. And we've all heard the famous slogan, diversity is our strength. Now, as much as I believe in this saying, a question tends to play in my head on repeat. How diverse are we? How diverse is our economy? I also believe we can all recognize how much work must be done in order for Torontonians to reap benefits of a vibrant economy and culture, to help business and culture partners succeed amid transformation and change as mentioned as a priority in the current economic development and culture strategy. I hope that we can all agree on the idea of this strategy impacting every community in the City of Toronto. We are working to ensure every Torontonian, regardless of where one resides, will feel supported enough to successfully expand the whole talent innovation. We are to make sure through this strategy, arts and culture are not undervalued by economic development measures. It's a challenge the city faces today. I can tell you that because the country's youngest innovators continue to face barriers that limit their success in a thriving city. In my opinion, a big shame for a city like Toronto. So, what can we do? Well, let's not discredit the programs that are already set in place. I think we should amplify these opportunities, as well as really make sure that we highlight what exists, right? Because I feel like when it comes to arts and culture, it's not really amplified here in the City of Toronto. We need to definitely improve communications because many of these residents are very unaware of what is provided to them. In addition to that, though, I think that we should pay a lot of focus to our partners, you know, the people who want to work with the city, the people who have the same goal as a city, and focus on really taking a calculated measure when it comes to like funding and so on and so forth. I think we need to provide affordable spaces where people can come together to collaborate, or better still, make use of underutilized spaces here in the City of Toronto. Before council, I've spoken a numerous amount of times about how talented the youth are in the City of Toronto. That is a known fact. You know, they lack platforms. They lack the support and, you know, amongst many other things. Thankfully, this is the social media era, right? So believe me when I say youth are using it to its full advantage. Although we can work independently, imagine the numerous amount of success stories the City of Toronto would be able to boast of as a city with the City of Toronto's support. Cities like New York, Los Angeles, Tokyo, so on and so forth, I tell you, I truly do believe that they have nothing on the City of Toronto if we can work together as a collective with the talented people who make Toronto's population and move forward. Toronto must be a leading Canadian city establishing and reaping good fruits from its strategic priorities for cultural investment. I'm amplifying the voice of many when I say I support this recommendation. I support the steps they're taking, you know, they want to use to really direct the whole strategy. You know what? No matter what type of innovator you are, what type of innovators that are out there in the world, I believe that innovators are the engine of the economy. Unfortunately, we're not putting enough gas in the tank, and it's time to change that. We are positioned as an international creative capital, but we can't hold such a prestigious title without calculated and critical planning. I think what I'm trying to say is that, we need to work together. I know that in the recommendation, what I take from it, if I want to summarize, is working as a collective with others, with our partners, with the amazing people who have similar goals with the City of Toronto to take Toronto's innovation, to take Toronto's culture to another level. So I'm here to amplify that and just extend my support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the speaker? Yep, Singh.
Thank you.
Councillor Lai, go ahead.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Being new on this committee, which organization you're from?
I'm on the City Youth Council of Toronto.
City Youth Council of Toronto?
Correct.
Okay. I really, and on another note, I really appreciate I've noted some very good points about what you've just deputated. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much for your presentation, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions on this particular item of staff, firstly? You have questions of staff, Councillor? Okay, questions of staff.
Thank you, Mr.
Councillor Lai.
Chair. Just now, patients have mentioned about improved communications. I just wanted to know whether any other types of language other than English for all the promotion on all the arts and culture for the City of Toronto. I just wanted to give you an example, like Nuit Blanche, that just happened over the weekend.
Nuit Blanche.
Louis Blanche.
Louis Blanche.
Louis Blanche.
White Knight.
It's a French thing. I'm not really good at French, but anyways, just wonder whether any of communications are in other languages so that we will be, include all the people that live in Toronto. Staff?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. Through the chair. We do provide advertising in languages other than English. In the case of marketing of Nuit Blanche in Scarborough this year, there was some promotional material produced in Chinese and in Tamil. But we'd like to work with the Councillor's office to understand where there might be gaps in that outreach and to address it for further events.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Cressy.
Just very briefly, thank you. To staff, the second core objective as it relates to space for culture. So you talk about, I see 4 bullet points here on page 6. One is concrete action to mitigate the loss of music venues, including exploration of property tax assessment capping. What's the status of that work?
Through the chair, thanks for the question, Councillor. EDC is working with Revenue Services with the intention to return to the Toronto Music Advisory Committee in the near future to talk about the progress on that work.
Okay. So if there was an amendment requesting staff from EDC along with, in collaboration with corporate finance staff, to come to TMAC to give, even if it's an early update on the status, is that something that could be accommodated?
Through the chair, absolutely. The next meeting, I think, is the end of November for TMAC, and it'd be appropriate for staff from both divisions to report out there.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cressy. Any further questions? Seeing none. To speak, Councillor Cressy.
Thank you. And first of all, thank you for staff for the work on this. I'm going to speak specifically on the live music side and the music side writ large. As it relates to the recommendation or the objective around spaces for culture, at TMAC, we had our first meeting of the new term just last week, and we talked about 2 key priorities for this term. One was looking at the affordability challenge for live music venues, and I think the recommendation here to look at a financial model that seeks to protect them, perhaps rather than a grant-based model, given that these are for-profits, many of them, looking at a tax model. And so I'm glad to see that recommendation in here. Sorry, I have an amendment to move first. My apologies. Thank you, Chair. And the amendment is to request staff from EDC in collaboration with corporate finance to present to our November meeting of TMAC on recommendation 1B with respect to maintaining spaces. And so it's, as I was saying before, I had forgotten to move the amendment. 2 key areas we're focusing on at TMAC that we've talked about. One is the affordability challenges around venues and looking at potential mechanisms within the tax model to support those entrepreneurs. And so we're looking to that update at the next TMAC meeting. And the other is looking to create spaces for new and emerging artists, particularly within the DIY scene, and to look at city-owned real estate to help make that viable, because the private market, especially in downtown, isn't always so. And so those are two areas we're going to be doing a lot of work on in the coming months. I'm thrilled to see it part here of the culture strategy going forward, and looking forward to having this conversation at TMAC, subject to committee support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tracy. Councillor Lai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'd like to echo on Councillor Cressey's comment about thanking staff for such a good strategy. This is my first year sitting on this committee, and I'm very happy that we have a strategy going forward. And just wanted to say, if you zoom in a few things about culture for all, and it's very good that we have a strategy that where they live in the city. So I'm happy that we're putting probably Scarborough back on the map now for where we live in the city. And I just wanted to think that, you know, the word diversity is very important, because, you know, we have culture for all, and then we do have some ethnic culture as well. Just different cultures, different ethnic cultures have different things that they're good at, because, you know, for instance, you know, Ukrainian, the dance, and, you know, and then Chinese, Indian, and Tamil, I have a lot of these population in my ward, and they have their own culture, festivals that they entertain themselves, because, you know, we were not being included probably in other parts, but it's a good thing that we have all these ethnic culture. And I just wanted to echo on what Patient had just said about we have to improve communications. And it's very, very important that we include people that wanted to attend, is to just to break the barrier. I think the missing link there is maybe we should market and promote some of these events for cultural events in different languages. I think it will help. And I've asked staff about that, and they were telling me that there's it's in the EDC equity plan, where, you know, where there's a roadmap to foster equity and inclusion in all the EDC activities. So I'm hoping that going forward with this strategy, we can be more inclusive of some of the people that have this kind of a language barrier. And space for culture is very important, that actually we do partner with some of these private cultural groups, and they might have space for us to use. For instance, just to give you an example, we do have, in my ward, there's a lot of art galleries that is from the Chinese community. I think we can actually tap into those to make sure that we have enough space. And as well for the Chinese Cultural Center, I'm very happy that, honored that they're in my ward as well. So we can actually perhaps, you know, look into exploring, sharing spaces to use in those areas. And about develop creative talent. And we have, on page 7 of the report, we have mentorship to newcomers. And a lot of these newcomers, I think they, you know, not only do they have to live in the new city, and they have some other barriers, such as language as well. And I'm hoping that we will, staff will probably, when you're doing some of these things, to be inclusive of them, is to break that barrier for them. So we might have a lot of, I went to actually an arts lunch not too long ago, and I've not noticed a lot of ethnic faces in that part of the luncheon. So I would hope that we, you know, by improving our communications, going forward with other strategy, we can actually be more inclusive for those people who have different barriers. And I just wanted to zoom in on these few things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I want just to thank the staff for the report that's in front of us. In 2010, when we launched the Creative Capital Gains initiative, our cultural community was under attack. In 2019, we are talking about its success. It's an $11 billion industry. There's a varying number of elements that are associated with the cultural sector, and there's no doubt that culture drives business in any capital. I was recently in Paris, where I spoke with the founder of Nuit Blanche, Christophe Gillard, and we talk a little bit about culture and how culture is, if you will, creating such a renaissance and creating such a epic shift in terms of how people see their own communities and so on. And I look at how we are advancing culture and the work that our cultural team is doing, Pat Tobin and the leadership of Mike Williams. I will say, job well done. I will say that the sector, cultural community, and I know that we've got Culture Days coming up, and they're all coming out to talk with us, and have read this report. And it's my understanding that they're very supportive of us moving forward with respect to the plans for 2020 to 2024. There's no doubt that we will always continue to fine-tune and tweak to ensure that increased levels of communication takes place, to ensure that groups and individuals who feel that they're not being captured as part of the plan are being such. And I know that there's a lot of work as well in our museum and our heritage area and so on. I mean, this is all part of our culture, and I think it's extremely important. So in my own area of Scarborough, 17 years ago, I spoke to a property owner there about turning some of his space into film and television studios and so on, and he didn't think that was possible. I'm proud to tell you that as we speak now, there are a Disney film that's taking place there and a number of other filming, and there are 3 brand new sound stages that are actually being built on Birchmount Road in the heart of my area. And I think that's phenomenal, and it speaks really to thank you for taking some away from you downtown, Councillor Fletcher. But it not only speaks to the level of confidence that people have in this city, but also speaks to the city itself in terms of how it's advancing and directing the culture. So our EDC group, I want to just acknowledge and say how proud I am of you for the work and leadership that you're doing in this particular area. Because it's really tough to try to please everyone, but I think that we're doing a pretty good job. The mayor's leadership has also been steadfast in terms of the annual pilgrimage that we make to Los Angeles to listen to the film industry and so on, and to ensure that we're not only simply paying lip service. We actually bought a film studio, the City of Toronto. We're owners of a film studio. I know that we are owners in Pinewood and so on. We literally went out and bought, hi, how are you? How you doing? No, please, Mom, just leave it. Just leave them. That's fine. Lots of space in the horseshoe. I think that's a welcome addition to the room. So this is all about culture, right? So this is very important. So it's really important what we're doing, and we're doing it collaboratively. We're measuring our success. We're looking at how we build on these things and so on, and I think it's extremely important. So I want to thank the staff for this report, and thank the members of this committee as well in terms of the leadership that we're providing in advancing this program and so on. So, members, we have the item. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. That's done. Madam Clerk.
As amended, right?
And on that was on Councillor Cressy. That was on your. We're voting on your motion. So, all those in favor? Opposes. Clause as amended. Item is amended. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, we're now moving on to the item EC 8.15, equity-based planning for early on child and family center. The first speaker I have is Terry Preston, Toronto Education Workers, QP 4400. Ms. Preston? Hi, good morning.
Thank you. I was going to let parents go first. I think they're young people.
I'd like to be entertained by the children, actually, so if you don't mind. I'm having fun. Thank you.
There you go. First of all, I want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak to you today. I am Vice President of Local 4400, responsible for the bargaining unit, which represents parenting workers, the frontline workers who deliver Toronto District School Board's early on in child and family centers. In terms of a bit of context, these programs go back to 1981 when they were first established in 5 inner-city schools by Mary Gordon, who has since won the Order of Canada. By 2006, the TDSB was directly funding 55 centers at a cost of $3.2 million to operate. In 2007, the ministry announced $6 million in funding for early years centers and initiated their expansion across the province. The government announcement described the programs in this way. Located in culturally diverse and high-needs neighborhoods, the centers focus on building children's literacy and numeracy skills through stories, music, reading, and playing. Staff also engage parents in children's learning and can link families with appropriate community resources for special needs, health, and other related services. In 2017, the Ministry of Education decided to provide the funding directly to local governments to administer. The role of the city is to coordinate the various models of service delivery and ensure access to various models of programming throughout the entire city. We have been told by the city that the city is taking a staged transitional approach to system transformation, and staff are currently working on a service plan for 2020-2024. The TDSB, as an early-on service provider for the city, is one of 53 third-party providers holding service agreements with the city for the delivery of the early-on program. Located in 75 sites, it represents approximately 1/3 of the early-on sector in the city. Of the $29,618,000 to cost to deliver the program in 2019, the TDSB receives $4.622 million, or approximately 1/6 of the funding. So delivering 1/3 of the programs for 1/6 of the funding. The TDSB closed 2 centers last year as enrollment in the schools had grown, and the space was required to run kindergarten classes at those 2 sites. So they closed not because there wasn't a need, but simply because they had run out of space in the school. The city report states clearly that the money recovered from the TDSB is not reflective of the actual cost of operating a community-based early-on center, as the TDSB program costs do not consider rental, utility, maintenance costs. Further cost efficiencies are found within the existing administrative structures of the TDSB, including payroll and other employee services. The TDSB operates with 1 parent worker on site, as opposed to many community programs which operate with 2 staff on site. Parenting workers employed by the TDSB have worked, on average, 10 years in the program. They are dedicated to the children and families who attend the program in their community schools. The effectiveness of the delivery model is well documented by research which was quoted by the federal government when justifying their grant to the province of $40 million per year for the delivery of these programs. So why are we here? Sounds like a good news story. In its budget process, the TDSB identified a potential structural deficit of $500,000 in the delivery of the programs for the 2019-20 school year, and a further potential structural deficit of $750,000 for the following year. This year's projected structural deficit, as noted in the report, has been mitigated by Children's Services' continued approval to permit the TDSB to operate above the allowable limits for staff-related costs provided for in the collective agreement covering the TDSB early-on frontline staff for this year. It should be noted TDSB parenting workers earn approximately $36,000 per year. It is important for the stability of these programs that the city re-examine the benchmarks established pertaining to staff costs.
Please wrap up, ma'am. You have 30 seconds.
And recognize it's not, so why I'm here is it's not good enough to provide 1 year exemptions. We really need to look at a fix
Okay.
to continue to deliver cost-effective programs to the communities.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Carroll, question?
So-
Oh, sorry. Councillor Fletcher has a question.
sorry.
Let's start visiting council.
Yes.
Thank you.
With the full-day kindergarten and so many people moving into neighborhoods, there are issues with the school board needing classrooms which were previously dedicated for early years programs. What do you see as a solution for that, to maintain these important programs at the same time as respecting the needs of the school board?
It's not a new issue for the school boards. In the past, it has happened. However, the funding for the program in those cases stayed with the school board, and programs were reopened in areas where there was a school available. So the staff would actively look for space in another school in order to run the same number of programs.
Have you ever thought of a portable or in any way to run an early years?
I'm unaware of a program running out of a portable currently.
But it's possible.
It could be possible.
Yes. It's
I mean,
a possibility. There's a number of possibilities not to lose programs in areas that actually need to have early year programs.
Yes, I think, you know, if we put our collective minds together, we could find solutions to having programs move out of areas.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Carroll, the question next.
So your point in the end that the program leader, there's not a lot of description in this report about what an early on center is or what the formerly named centers were. But basically what you're saying is while they're running, there's one leader operating the program during the day because the adults are with their kids. You can have the one leader, but that one person is earning a poverty level salary for doing the job.
That's right. The wage rate for the early on workers in the TDSB is one of a adult educator. And and they are all also qualified ECE certified. So they're running a program which encourages parents to take an active role in the learning of their children within the center.
So for $36,000 a year in the real estate, we're getting a lot of school readiness for every child.
Absolutely, and I would also say that it builds community and provides a very important family support.
That's certainly true, and some of my schools are sort of children in situ ESL classes. When you attend them, that people are picking up English by being there and being propelled into other programs once those children are in school age. So who is the provider? And us taking the whole thing over and putting everything under one umbrella, could we track, or has someone been tracking up until now, the vulnerability of the centers with demographic shifts within the TDSB? As they were closing and shutting down, that amount of, the transitory nature of some of the programs that are in more crowded neighborhoods in terms of school enrollment, have we been tracking all along how difficult it is to keep them in one place, or how often they have to be moved?
There has, I can't really respond to how the TDSB has been tracking. I would say the programs where they are running are well attended, and which clearly demonstrates a need in those areas. What the TDSB has been doing, and I think it actually aligns well with the equity and inclusion values that the city has for the delivery of the programs, is if a site is lost, they previously, before the money went back to the city, would look for a site that was in an underserviced area and open there.
So, in your view, there are these little changes, but they could be framed as just administrative changes. But there's a real vulnerability here under this funding model that we just start dropping centers one by one by one if the enrollment goes up and they don't get replaced.
Well, I think one of the things that I think is key in this report is it talks about a smooth transition if the TDSB terminates its contract with the city. And it's also clear in the report that community-based programs cost more than the TDSB model. So you won't get 75 programs running with the money that would come back to the city if the TDSB was no longer running the programs.
And if they're getting out of the role and out of the job of finding a school space to put them at least nearby when they have to squeeze them out of a school, they're getting out of that business. And our business in the funding model prescribed by the province includes our commitment to making sure that we're adding in a better job of dealing with French language, a better job of dealing with Indigenous communities. Overall, we could end up, the two things compete, don't they? But in order to open those, we may be shrinking the program ourselves, unless it's clearly stated here that the goal is to grow the program, not to shrink it, to meet those equity goals.
Last question.
I believe I saw in the report that additional funds were being provided for the opening of Indigenous programs.
Yes, some. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Cress? No questions? Anyone else? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Our next speaker is Andreas Sisson. Hi. Morning. You have 5 minutes. Let me know when you're ready, please.
I'm sorry, I had to write this down because I'm quite nervous.
No worries. Take your time, please. Just take a deep breath. Would you like some water?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
You're good? Take a deep breath and let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready. Thank you.
Fantastic. You have 5 minutes.
My name is Andresa Sisson. I attend the IRC Parenting Literacy Center, and I was able to come today only because my mom came into town to care for my little one, and I'm speaking on behalf of many parents who were not able to attend, although I think having a bunch of bored toddlers and unnapped babies might be more influential than this talk right now. I have 4 children who have all, over 10 years, attended the center with me and always call the parenting center my school or Miss Leslie's school. My eldest 3 have all moved into real school, each with confidence and excitement and to the delight of their JK teachers who are amazed at their maturity. We have the great benefit of Leslie Atkins being our center's facilitator and educator, and she is one of my children's most beloved people. The center is my own happy place, and it has become a beautiful community to all of us. Being a parent is sometimes terrifying and sometimes very isolating, and having a space to talk to other parents and caregivers has been a lifesaver to me. There are so many of us who are without support: new parents, new Canadians, new neighbors, grandparents, stay-at-home dads, and people learning English that may otherwise be completely alone. We are finding and building communities here at the center for ourselves and for our children. It is a place to find support, advice, a friendly smile when you need it, and a shoulder to cry on, and always a uniting story. I'm a better mother because of this program. It is a space away from distractions of dishes and bills, where the focus is positive attention and quality time with my children. Especially for single children families, or in my case, the last babe, who don't often have playmates. They are often missing social skills and may not be able to navigate well outside their own homes. Exposing our little ones to other children and adults gives them so many benefits and tools that set them up for education and life. Learning to share is a huge one, a hard one even for adults. Empathy is another biggie. Making friends, making art, seeing all kinds of people and multicultures, and having a focus on education and a love for books that they can carry through their life. Having many other people invested and caring about each other's children is a brilliant gift to them. Having our program run within a school gives multiplied benefits. School rules and etiquette are so easily followed as children see other students walking, not running in the halls, lining up and waiting for gym time, participating in circle time songs, and sitting with our hands to ourselves. Already knowing an in-school center lets children and parents step into JK with much greater ease. We used to sometimes go on Fridays to an early year center when Miss Leslie's was closed, and they just don't have the same focus on learning. There's a cold environment with little interaction between parents and children and no sense of community caring that I could feel. And it speaks to the training, experience, and values of its workers. The Parenting and Literacy Center is run by professionals who are so dedicated, engaged, and highly educated and invested in caring and in creating a growing space and not just a drop and play zone. We benefit from Leslie's years of knowledge and wisdom, tips and tricks that help us filter through so much before age 4, allowing us to catch kids' issues before they get shifted into school, before issues become impediments to learning or class disruptions. And I can speak to that for all my other children in higher grades that have such difficulty with children who, never learned how to sit down properly or listen. As it seems to be a cost issue, I have no fact sheet on what the obvious cost would be of finding new real estate in Toronto and refurbishing locations and care of facilities and all of that. But there are many incalculable financial infrastructure benefits of having happy and adjusted people. A burping technique from a local grandmother helped my daughter with major gas pains. Finding out diaper rashes correlate with teething has helped me not freak out and go to emergency over minor things. Easing healthcare systems. Having parents pre-invested in school adds more participation, volunteering, donations, more care, which funds a school district longer. These programs need to be expanded and not shrunk. This is an investment in education, a place for children to become better students, better citizens, and better people. And thank you for supporting such amazing programs and for supporting our children.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I'll see if there's any questions. Okay, there are no questions of you. Thank you.
Can I just speak to questions you asked?
No.
Okay.
No, thank you.
Yes.
We have our next speaker is, I believe it's Tanil Will. Hi.
Hi.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, thank you.
How are the stars of the show?
I know. This is a good example why we need, Archie, do you want to join me? Okay.
Just for that, I will start your time now that the
All
important
right.
person has arrived.
First of all, I just have to say, I cannot express my praise and gratitude for these early on centers and the people that run them. There's got to be a way where we can expand with the province to get more, because the funding has to be there for Archie. I'm so grateful for the education and the socialization that they have provided for my son as well as for myself. From healthcare information to sleeping, sleep training, and things I didn't even know I was supposed to know as a parent, that it has been such an amazing source of knowledge and education. I have no family or friends with children in this city, but thanks to the early on years, I do now. Archie, do you want to help me? Okay. Archie, stop.
I'll stop your time.
I'm so sorry. I'll try to
worries.
get through this enough. We're normally at a early on years center now. But basically all I wanted to say is I have such a support network. As you see, I have friends behind me that I've met through the center that have been an amazing source of inspiration and support. The early on years, they offer my son gym time, which he would normally be in right now, story time, crafts, snacks, friendships. He has a whole network of people who care for him and help guide him so that he can learn his fundamentals. As an only child, he's learned to share and be patient. We're still working on sound control, but I've learned the difference between a tantrum and a meltdown, and the early on years is helping him to become Zoe. And the early on years has become great in helping him to be an adapted and contributing member of our society. I'm so grateful that I'm no longer isolated as a parent alone, but that I have a wonderful support network thanks to these centers, and I believe we should open more across the province. And I believe that Mary Gordon opened them in the schools so that the transition to schools would be absolutely so much easier for them. Thank you so much. And Archie, would you like to say thank you?
Thank you very much. Archie, thank you. No? He wants his early on programs.
He's done. Yeah, I will take him back to school.
Wants to go back to them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? No, there are no questions of you, ma'am. Okay. Our next speaker is Anna Doby. Anna? Archie's looking at Councillor. Okay. Hi, good morning.
Hi there.
Good morning. You have 5 minutes. Let me know when you're ready, ma'am.
I am ready.
Fantastic. Go ahead,
Okay.
please.
I am here via Queen Victoria Public Schools early on in Parkdale. It is a center that we also I call home. My children call home. It's another place in the community where they feel comfortable and loved and safe and are taught how to behave in a school. The early on centers foster community and parental involvement in the schools. Queen Victoria's current parent council is made up of over a quarter of parents who came directly from the early on center. It's a great way for newcomers to learn about Canadian cultures, but also to share their customs. This month at our early on center, we had a harvest feast. We're celebrating Diwali next week, and we'll also be celebrating Halloween. So there's a great kind of opportunity for us to learn about cultures of newcomer Canadians and for them to learn about how we do things. There is one woman I can, came to the early on center within 24 hours of having landed in this country. She had no family, no friends, and, sort of a little understanding of what went on. And in the last year, she's managed to make friends, to have really a sense of community. I cannot imagine the strength that it takes to fly around the world with your, young child and end up in a community that you might not understand. But she's found family and friends there, which I think is incredibly important. We had 20 children last year graduate into the school system. These are kids who will know how to line up, how to sit patiently and listen to a story, sort of, we hope. And they, they really get an understanding of how a school day works. The idea of playtime, gym time, line up to go outside for recess. These are things that I think help them to be secure when they start school finally. I know at least for my 2 children, that's absolutely the case. We have a large, where am I? Sorry, guys. There's also a place, or it's a place that parents can come and, as people here have said, they have healthy child screenings, so people who may not have access to healthcare in the same way that we all do can have their children screened, their teeth, their eyes, all of that stuff. There's also toy libraries and book libraries, so parents can have access to toys they may not be able to afford. And I really hope that you will work with the province and with the feds to ensure that these programs are properly funded. And please do not allow the TDSB, to step back, because we need these programs. They're vital to family lives and really to the general good. And I think that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. There are questions of you. Councillor Carroll, please.
Just a quick question, because you've finished on how our interaction should go with the TDSB. Has the early on parent community also spoken at the TDSB at their board meeting?
No, I didn't. No, if you've got information on when that is, I absolutely would like to go.
I don't know that it's even on their agenda other than as a budget exercise, so that might be something we should ask. Okay.
But yeah, I would definitely be interested in doing that.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Our next speaker, and I will try this name, Subhajan Aral Chalvam. Is that you? Did I get it right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I passed the test. Thank you very much. So you'll have 5 minutes to speak. There's a clock to the left, and I know you've been here all morning seeing this, so thank you very much and welcome to the committee. You may begin. Thank you.
Okay. I'm here to talk about how the early on at Queen Victoria Public School changed my life, as well my son. I had postpartum depression after my son. I was feeling lonely and confused. After I started going to early on, I made friends. My son also started to play with other children. Miss Claire, the teacher there, supported me a lot. I am confident now and also thankful to the center. So we need early on. I think that's unique to Canada. Also, it helped my child to easily transition to school. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any questions? There are no questions of you. Thank you very much, ma'am. And the final presenter I have is Valerie Kenny. Ms. Kenny? Good morning. It's almost afternoon. You have 5 minutes, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone, or almost good afternoon, and thank you very much for this opportunity. First of all, I'd like to say, for many of the parents that have spoken, I think they've given you a really great understanding of what actually happens in the program and the benefits they get from it, and I commend them for their wonderful presentations. It was said by others that these programs are lifelines for parents and caregivers, and that's what they absolutely are. Many parents will describe them as second homes. Families can experience, first of all, families can experience amazing and terrible isolation when they're at home raising young children. And these community programs offer a place to go that's free, that's welcoming, that has other parents. You get to meet your neighbors, and they are absolutely essential. Families come, many parents and caregivers come for their own needs of meeting other parents and caregivers, but we also, of course, is a huge focus on learning through play. This learning through play it enables equity in our educational system, where children can enter kindergarten feeling very confident and on a positive trajectory to begin their learning journey at the school level. For newcomers in our city, these programs are places of welcome and acceptance of diversity, places that demystify the school system and make it not such a scary place. And as the other parents said, they are places where people become very comfortable and then end up volunteering in the school, becoming very engaged in education. I would just like to tell you that actually I'm sitting here before you. I was in this chamber about 40 years ago speaking to a group about child abuse and neglect. And actually I was saying how it was the Family Resource Program, an early version of Early On, that existed in Earl Grey School in a portable, by the way, Paula Fletcher, that ran very well in 1978. I was suffering from postpartum depression at the time, and I used to walk a couple of miles to that program, and I can tell you today that that program saved our family's skin. It was being able to find a place, just as this other woman said, to go. It was free, it was welcoming, it's a place of non-judgment, it's a place of celebration, as people said, it's a place of community cohesion. And if these programs are lost in communities, wow, what a terrible loss they leave, what a terrible gap they leave, what a terrible hole they leave. Because from the surface, they can look like just parents getting together, but there are many layers of benefit to these programs. Early learning and play and equity and education being one, but also many benefits to the community, because they truly are places of community. And they're places where neighbors meet each other. They're places that bring down barriers, because people get to know each other on a deeper level and get to see this person's not very much different from I am. And so they build that community cohesion that we need so badly. And if we have many more of them, I would I would say, and many people would say, they are places that are our best bet against crime that happens in neighborhoods, because children are given a great chance and communities know each other. So thank you for the opportunity. I hope that the city, together with the TDSB, together with the province, will find a solution to keep these programs alive for families and the communities in Toronto. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, questions of staff? Okay, Councillor Fletcher, questions of staff? You're fine? Okay, Councillor Cressy, and then Councillor Carroll.
Just a few brief questions. So, first of all, across the early on programs, and I know we have 4 programs under that umbrella, how many kids in Toronto use those programs?
Thank you, Councillor. And through the chair, there's about 89,000 children who use those programs across the City of Toronto.
All right. And those programs are geographically based throughout the city, though I imagine there are some gaps which we need to address. Is that right?
That's correct.
So do we have, if they're across the city and we have some gaps, and the population is also increasing, do we have a growth strategy for how to continue to expand the early on program, both into the areas where the gaps are and to accommodate increasing population?
Through the chair, the programs were transitioned to us in January 2018 to the City of Toronto. We've been working closely with the community to transition those programs. We don't currently have a growth strategy similar to the one we have for childcare, but that is certainly a key objective for the division.
Okay. Can you give me a breakdown in terms of how the programs are funded? I know it can be complicated, but we act as the service manager essentially. How do we administer the funding, and where does the city provide funding?
We administer the funding to agencies. We have 53 agencies across the city, about 270 locations. Those agencies submit an annual budget which outlines their costs for staffing, supplies, equipment, et cetera. And then the city provides them, reviews those budget and provides their funding allocation annually based on that. And
is the entirety of the funding that we provide flowed through the provincial government?
No, it's not. The provincial government funds about almost $27 million. The City of Toronto provides about $2.6 million in funding.
And the TDSB, by virtue of providing space, must also provide funding.
The TDSB does provide space, but that's in kind, so that's not included in their budget that they submit to the City of Toronto.
Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carroll, question?
So there are lots and lots of maps in this report and in the plan, but not the hard numbers. How many centers do we have, and do they all, they're coming together out of sort of a patchwork of programs that existed because they sort of came out of legacy cities or legacy boards and different models. But how many programs are there now that will be called early on centers?
Through the chair, there's currently 270 unique programs operating in the City of Toronto.
Okay. And how many of those are school-based? Do we have superstar ones that aren't even in schools and they've somehow managed their facility challenge?
There are 75 locations that are located in Toronto District School Board.
Oh, okay, 75. So that's, about a third, yeah. So there's almost 200 of them that are outside of schools.
That's correct.
So I found this report very cloudy. Just let us carry on with this strategy. But how do I know where the centers are in my ward? Has it been mapped by ward and the services that are offered? I know where they are, so that I can watch them. Because we're making a big program change here. How will I know what the impact is of what we're proposing if I don't even know where the programs are?
Through the chair, we do have the early on programs map, so that information wasn't provided in this report, but part of the transition was to map those programs and make that information available to primarily to families so they can easily locate programs in their community. They are on our website.
So they're on the website, so it would be an easy thing for you to do to create ward lists for us.
Oh, yes, we do have those, Councillor.
Because I think it would be helpful to have that attached to the action plan. Because you have to know what these are, as I do, as you're reading this report. I read the whole report and I thought, what if I'd never heard of these? What if I'd never had a child? There's no hard and fast description anywhere in this report about what a morning in an early on center is like, what it is. It's nowhere in this plan. So should the book not be created that it would be useful for any counselor, whether they had ever had a child, been a child in one, shouldn't they know what it is? Or are they all the same? Are there some that deliver differently than others? Or do they all basically fit that mold of the half-day program that takes place with parents and caregivers? Is there a variance there still, or are they all now delivering in a similar way and delivering similar curricula, if you will?
So through the chair, the programs are moving towards delivering a similar suite of services, and that was part of the transition from the province, that there would be some standardization and continuity across programs. We are working on a communication strategy. We started last year, but we recognize there's much more work to be done, both to brand the programs, describe the programs for families, and make that information available to the public in general. We did a bus shelter campaign last year, and we plan to do more communication to tell the story exactly as you're asking about what the programs are, what can be delivered, and who they're available to.
Okay, so maybe I have to wait for that to come forward. What do we mean when we say suite of services?
Do you want to speak to that, Karen?
Through the chair, the ministry guidelines require the city or the systems manager to provide core services, and those core services, there's three in particular. One is engaging parents and caregivers. The second one is supporting early learning and development, and that's through the drop-in programs that you heard many families talk about today and the value of those. And making connections for families, which again was core in some of the deputations that you heard today.
Right, so when you say a suite of services, what you mean is the way we develop the program around that half-day model of program. It all happens, but it all continues to happen inside that program.
Through the chair, that's correct. And some of these programs run part-time, and some of them run full-time.
Does full-time mean?
Your last question.
What do we mean by full-time? Does full-time mean 2 classes, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, so double the children and families are going through them?
Through the chair, part-time would mean a 3-hour program. Full-time would be similar to a hub where it's open in the morning and closes in the afternoon, and various activities occur from morning until late afternoon. The provincial guidelines require programs to run, or that programs be available in a ward 5 days a week and a weekend and 1 evening.
Okay, thank you.
So they vary because they were transferred in 4 different program types.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I've run out of time.
Councillor Fletcher, visiting council first. And Councillor Cressy, I have you.
Yes, I am just going to say that these are such important programs, and I have been associated with them for many years. The parenting centers that were in the Toronto District School Board, and there's 75 of them, when Councillor Carroll and I were trustees, the whole community had to fight very hard because they were going to be closed. We had teddy bear picnics at Queen's Park. Everybody brought their kids. They brought teddy bears. We had to fight to say how important it is to have these resources in the communities, in the schools, because kids are already there. Parents would bring their older kids to school and take the younger kids to the parenting center. It was just fantastic. It was very much set up by Mary Gordon, who, as somebody said, was award-winning. She also set a program up, I don't even know if it's still run, called Roots of Empathy, where older kids would meet a baby that was newborn and travel with that baby, would travel for a number of years in the school, and kids would show child development and become empathetic with babies and children. Such an important thing. This was part of the work that Fraser Muster had championed as far as the 0 to 6 being the most important years. We have early kindergarten now. We have full days, so at 3.5, you can be in kindergarten. But all of those kids in these centers where you're not dropping off your child and getting the child babysat, you're there, they're learning language, they're learning social skills, they're learning so much that makes them school ready. And I was very sorry to see that 2 schools-based programs were closed. And Councillor Cressy's ward and my ward, in particular Blake, has had learning opportunities. It's been the one school in the East End that's still remained on the Learning Opportunities Index, which means there's a lot of low-income parents there. And there are other community-based programs in the East End, long-time ones that South Riverdale Parent and Child Centre is probably one of the longest-standing ones in the City of Toronto. The Massey Centre, which has wraparound, including women living there with their kids, and then there's the drop-in parent resources with 2 places. Daycare Connections, which is a childcare center. They also run drop-ins. So the importance of the continuum of being able to be with your child in a social setting, in a learning setting, starting from the beginning, is so important for everyone. And I think somebody said that it probably kept them from running to the emergency ward and going to the doctor all the time, because you're sharing information and there's professionals that say, well, that's normal for your child, rather than something wrong with my child and you're running off to check that out. So how important they are. So I just think we need to celebrate that, be clear that these are long-standing programs. And at the TDSB, when we had our fight, there was this notion that there was only a certain number, so we had to spread them out throughout the whole city and take them away from this area and give them to another. And I think that we need to be very careful that that's not our approach here. This is not and can't be our approach with children. If it's a good idea, it should be everywhere. If I have 3 and you have none, don't take my 2 to you. You need them in your community so that everybody, newcomers, new parents, new mothers, those who are socially isolated, and often new moms are socially isolated. They really are. Public health used to visit everybody and say, how can I help you? And one of the things they would say is, here's the drop-in center so you're not socially isolated. They're so important. I want to see our approach be one of expanding. I believe Councillor Cressy has a motion regarding the members' motions that were made in June, which were to find other locations for the existing parenting centers that are being forced out of schools with full-day learning and so many people moving into neighborhoods. We can't just say we're closing them down. We have to say this is an important service to relocate and to grow across the City of Toronto.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Cressy to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll move an amendment here that I've worked closely with staff on and spoken with the chair about. But before speaking to it, let me take a step back to echo some of the words we heard from deputants about why early on programs matter. They matter because of the parental support they provide. We heard that. They matter as part of a continuum of early childhood education. They matter because not only are they intended to be available where needed, but flexibly delivered under different models to accommodate different neighborhoods. And so this is not new. This dates back decades and has been proven, this work. Especially, it's been particularly proven when it's embedded as part of a school system, because it gets people not only providing that parental support and that early childhood education, but so that it's part of the school and that continuum of childhood development and the connection to principals and teachers. And so The future, and this is where I'll speak to the amendments, is I think we all recognize we need to do a little bit more work on this. We need to do more work to ensure that we're working with the school board to continue operating in schools. We need to do more work to ensure that as we develop an equity approach to ensure that every parent and kid who needs these programs can access them, that we're not doing that at the expense of a growth strategy to ensure that as our population grows, that we're also serving them. That we're not just reshuffling deck chairs on a ship, but rather that we're accommodating both those who desperately need it, and we need to be there now in neighborhoods that aren't being served, but also in neighborhoods that are growing. And so I would close by saying that the city, we are the service manager here. We put money in. The province puts the bulk in. So we have to work with other levels of government. We have to work with the TDSB. But I think we need to come back with greater clarity around these principles. I had talked with staff around, do we just defer this? But we can't just defer it if we're going to give these recommendations to come back with it, which is why the amendment technically calls for deleting, though this is something city staff are comfortable with and we've spoken about. And so I want to thank staff for their work, thank our deputants, thank the chair for his leadership, and I look forward to carrying on with this conversation for these critical programs.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cressy. Councillor Carroll to speak. And Councillor Carroll, just before you speak, I'll just give you time. Members, we have basically 2 small items left after we had 3 speakers on EC 16. I'd like to ask members if we could maybe just move to extend the meeting to complete the agenda. So all those in favor, opposed, that's carried. And I've consulted with the staff members and they're totally fine with that. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Carroll.
Oh, yeah, I asked probably what seemed like really dumb questions, but I think there ought to be a dumb section to every report where we start by saying, what are we talking about? I think the reason that all of these moms felt they had to come here today to spell out to us what early on years centers, what early on does for them, is because it doesn't say it anywhere in this report. What is it? Where is it? How many do we have? What happens there? Over how many hours? It doesn't say that anywhere here. And yet, we're going to make big decisions about it. We've taken all these programs and pulled them into one, but there's no program map that says, what is the administration around that now? And did we gain anything by pulling them together? Because we can be ordered to pull things together, but we're often pretty good at getting a gain out of that. Okay, now we have program control. Now we can create some consistency of quality of service. I see that evolving, but it's not really spelled out. What's the state of the union right now? What happens in all of these places and what kinds of places are they? So what is the real estate challenge going forward? Is there potential to get more of them in schools? Because it's not just whether the community is growing or shrinking, but the demographics shrink and grow. When I was spending my time in these centers in the old North York board, both North York and Scarborough, and probably Etobicoke, but I live far away from it, so I don't know, all of them had schools that were about a third full. And so anywhere you wanted to pop one of these in, you could just do it, as long as the board had the resources. There was space in spades. There was about 80 kids in each school. And if you walked into all the neighborhood schools in your area to say, should my child go here, all of them were taking optional attendance students and looking for programs to put in. That's not going to be, for the foreseeable future, that's not going to be the case. We've headed into the breeding years of the millennials, as I've said a couple of times this year. And so a lot of kids are suddenly going to fill up the schools. And so we're going to have a challenge here. So I think it's crucial at this juncture that you tell me what is the state of the union, where are the spaces, not just a map with little pink dots, but the real numbers and the real locations. So I know what's the base service in my ward right now, and what do I advocate? What am I advocating for? I don't really know from reading this whole report and the whole 44-page booklet. So I think that it is possible to recover that in the report that we would get back from Councillor Cressy's motion. I was tempted to send this report back. This report is missing a whole bunch of information that would turn 25 councillors into champions and advocates of the program. That passion part, non-bureaucratic passion part, and State of the Union part is missing from the report. But I think there is a possibility that Councillor Cressy's motion is more constructive than referring a report back and causing nothing to happen for a while, because it directs us to look into those things. And I hope, based on my speech, that there is some addendum to the report that comes back that gives me that. The State of the Union in hard addresses and tangibles, so that I know what I have and what to advocate for in any growth strategy or improvement quality strategy that you may have. Thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you very much, Councillor. All right. So, Councillor Cressy? Okay, back to the table. It's okay. We're going to vote, especially on your motion. Sorry. No, that's okay. All right, members, we have a motion by Councillor Cressy. You've seen it. All those in favor? Oppose? That's carried, and there's no item to be amended because we deleted the recommendation and we've changed that. All right, so moving right along, we are now moving to EC 8.16, provincial funding changes and previously approved childcare capital projects update. We have 3 speakers at the moment. The first speaker is Amy O'Neill, Toronto Coalition for...
to leave, but she submitted her...
Okay, so she's not here. Oh, that's fine. Carolyn Ferns, is that you? Ontario Coalition for Better Childcare. And Caroline Stoddard, is that you? Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much. You have 5 minutes.
Go first. Caroline's going to go first because she's...
As you wish.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, hi. Thanks for giving us this opportunity to talk a little bit more about adjourning childcare, affordable childcare. I am an immigrant here in Canada and just arrived in Toronto 1 year and a half ago, let's say. I'm a mother of one and professional and also a student, so I'm pursuing my doctorate program. And so I was in Quebec when I got pregnant, so Quebec seems, sorry? Okay. We're in Montreal, and what is hard in Montreal to do is like to find a daycare, but you know we can afford it because it costs $7.55 a day for a subsidized daycare. Of course, we have another price for private daycare, but for like subsidized daycare, it's like almost ridiculous. And then when my daughter was 16 months, we moved to Canada. To Toronto. I was still in mat leave, and then I was attending those early on programs. And after this, I realized that I had to still like resume my studies at the doctorate program and look for a job, like to invest in my career. And then we started to look for daycares. And we thought it was going to be hard to find one because like we don't have too many spots, but we are shocked and frustrated when we saw the price. Like we applied for the fee subsidized program. We didn't qualify. So we decided to make hard decisions on the financial planning to be able to give this chance, this opportunity to my daughter, but also like this opportunity to us to keep improving, like to keep it developing on our professionals' life. So we had to live in a very small apartment. So we live in a 1-bedroom apartment to be able to afford rent and daycare. We decided to sell the car, so we use public transportation here in Toronto. We decided not to go on vacations, like for trips to visit our families that are in France and in Brazil. So we have to wait for them to come to see us. And we are living by the paycheck every month, just to like make sure my daughter was having a very good educational quality here in Toronto. And at the end, we realized that was not enough. We had to use the credit card to pay for this service. 3 or 4 months ago, my husband got a new job here in Toronto, which is a little bit better paid. And then we decided to, like, of course, pay the debts. Like nowadays, we can organize, plan ourselves, plan better, like on financial struggles. Like, but still, we do believe that a price for the daycare is so high here in Toronto that we don't have. Even if you want to have another kid, we can't because it's going to be even harder to afford for it. I know it could be worse because, like, as I told here, like, we have just one income at home, but still we can afford it. But I think about all those people that don't have the chance to have one great income or 2 great incomes to put the children at daycare and at the same time pursue their professional lives. And I just want to make clear how cutting the subsidy program or increasing the fees can have a huge impact on families in Toronto.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none? Okay. Caroline Fernd.
Hi. Good morning.
Good.
Thank you very
afternoon.
much for, yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for waiting for us. And I know it's really difficult to be in between a room and lunchtime, so.
Oh, no,
I
no,
will,
no,
I
please,
will
we're
speak
good.
quickly.
Take your time.
So my name is Carolyn Ferns, and I'm from the Ontario Coalition for Better Childcare. And this morning, we've been lucky to hear from many parents from, using early on programs and childcare programs. But I want to read a letter from a parent who couldn't be here today. And to me, this represents thousands of parents who are at work right now and whose kids are at childcare or who are at home caring for their children, for whom childcare is such an important program and who couldn't take the time to be with us today. So I'm going to read this letter from a parent at St. Stephen's Childcare Centre. She writes that, in the fall of 2015, we found out that we were expecting twins. Before we could even fully digest the exciting yet overwhelming news, we were deeply concerned with how we would afford childcare. We had no family close by to help. My husband couldn't leave at the beginning of his rigorous program at the University of Toronto. I, as the sole income earner, could not leave my job as a teacher. Even budgeting for maternity leave was a stretch. We looked at various options, but no matter which option we looked at, it was impossible to make ends meet. To give you an idea of what we were facing, the cost of 2 infant spaces would be approximately $4,160 per month. Our combined monthly income was just over $5,000 and would dip even lower while I was on maternity leave. The average rent for a 1-bedroom apartment in Toronto in 2016 was $1,110. After the cost of daycare, we wouldn't have even been able to cover the rent for 4 people in a 1-bedroom apartment, let alone feed and dress our new 1-year-old twins. As an educated, employed, full-time professional, I was unable to afford childcare for my unborn twins. This caused extreme stress, and I remember wondering how other families with more children or more challenging economic situations managed. As I continued to investigate our options, I learned about the City of Toronto Childcare Fee Subsidy Program. I heard it was difficult to secure due to long wait lists, and even if I did secure it, I'd be lucky to find 2 infant spots at a daycare. I had to at least try. I placed my name on the wait list, and I hoped while exploring other options. A month before my parental leave ended, we found out that not only had 2 spaces opened up at a nearby center, but we were at the top of the waiting list for the fee subsidy program. We had a huge sense of relief. We felt like we had hit the jackpot. I returned to work early because I knew this was an opportunity that we could not turn down. I can't begin to tell you the gratitude I have for childcare in this city. While the cost of raising a family of 4 in Toronto on a single or even double income is still challenging, without the fee subsidy, I'm not sure where my family would be today. We would certainly have accrued a tremendous amount of debt and endured even more stress, which I know many other families struggle with daily. Even though we pay a fraction of the cost, it's truly the maximum we can afford in our current financial situation. And I know so many families who are stretched well beyond their means in various economic situations. When I learned that the provincial budget cuts would result in increased fees and lost subsidies, my heart sank, thinking of the hundreds of families and children that would be negatively impacted. While I know how lucky we have been to have benefited from this program for the past 2.5 years, I still worry about the cost of before and after school childcare. Even more so, I worry about the hundreds and thousands of families who are finding out today or tomorrow that they are expecting a baby, or who immediately feel stress and anxiety knowing the astronomical costs of childcare that awaits them. The hundreds of families who will no longer have the financial support and who will be left in despair once their fees increased or their subsidies are lost. Even as we become a double-income family, the cost of childcare will not go unfelt. I have had a hard time accepting that a family with 2 working professionals, parents, still struggle to make ends meet due to the cost of childcare. Furthermore, I deeply empathize with the families who are in more challenging economic situations. So this letter from this mother at St. Stephen's, I think, perfectly illustrates for us the challenge that we're facing, the high cost of childcare in this city, and how deeply felt the province's funding cuts are going to be. So I thank all the councillors in this room and the City of Toronto for continuing to support childcare, and I look forward to continuing to work with you to try to advocate to the province to restore funding to childcare. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. To speak, or questions of staff? Any questions? Councillor Carroll?
So, pardon me. In looking at, we got the deadline extended, but we're still looking at proceeding with building spaces, knowing that there is no operating funding when they're complete. Is that the case?
Through the chair, that's correct.
So, when we first got this offer from the province, and they're quite clear, you put it on it's on page 4 under this new memo, B17. School boards may request childcare capital funding for school projects if the local service system manager, that being us, both supports the need and confirms the proposed new space will not result in an operating pressure. How do we get around that in the memo? Because you have to agree, and in order for them to proceed, you have to say there will not be an operating pressure. Does that not mean that upfront we are committing that we will, if this center gets built and exists, we will pay for it with property tax dollars? Is that not what the memo will lock us into?
Through the chair, the memo states that if the municipalities agree with school boards to proceed, that they will find the resources from within their existing operating budget. So, that will be a challenge at that time. We don't anticipate that these programs will start to become a pressure until at least 2022, if not 2025, before any of those spaces are built and operational. We'll have, if there is a pressure, we will bring it forward to council, but there's not an assumption that funding is approved. We'll have to work within our existing envelope and determine how we can best ensure access for those programs.
So we have a set of legislative rules that say we build subsidized programs and we work with program delivers that we know well and are vetted, places like the Y, and so when we're providing public subsidy and we're using public dollars, those are all for not-for-profit operators?
Through the chair, that's correct. We have in the system about 70% of our operators are not-for-profit. There are some commercial operators in the system, but expansion and capital growth would only occur in not-for-profit with not-for-profit providers.
So and the school boards like it that way as well. If we proceed with developing spaces that we have no operating dollars for the end, are we not opening the door to, well, we're going to have a bunch of new centers and we don't have the operating dollars? So I guess in a public facility, we just built a center that the only way for it to function is to allow the for-profit sector into it. Are we not running that risk?
No, through the chair.
Do we have legislative rules that would stop that from happening?
Through the chair, the school board currently engages with not-for-profit operators through their expression of interest process. So as those new programs are coming into schools, they would be not-for-profit. In addition, if they have a service agreement with the City of Toronto, they'd be not-for-profit.
So if we get to the point where we have all those centers and we don't have operating dollars for them, we have no legislative quality control that stops them from changing that rule. They like working with not-for-profit centers as well. But if they've got space for childcare, purpose retrofitted into their school space, and we don't have operating dollars for them in 22, 23, 24, if the rubber hits the road for us, have we built public childcare centers that can only act as childcare centers if we just let the profit sector in?
Through the chair, regardless of the auspice of the program, not-for-profit or commercial, the operator would have the same need for fee subsidies, depending on the community, or to provide an affordable rate. So that doesn't differ by auspice. Putting a commercial operator in there, possibly they would be willing to take a greater risk, but they would have the same pressure as a not-for-profit operator.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Lai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, on page 7 of the report about ward priority, who determines the priority on these maps?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Page 7 of the report of the...
Oh, right, sorry. Through the chair, the ward priorities are determined through our growth strategy. So we look at the population of the City of Toronto, the number of programs and services currently available, number of families living under low income. So taking all of those into account, we're able to predict where we need to grow services.
So the staff, city staff actually determined...
That's right.
And so how was it determined? You just told me about how. Can you repeat that again?
Right, so we look at, so through the growth strategy, we have a council-approved strategy that looks at demand. So how can we predict demand? We look at the population now and over the next 10 years to try and anticipate growth. We look at the number of families in those neighborhoods living under low income, and we also look at the number of programs and services available. So if we see there's a high number of families, a growing population, and a small number of programs, that would become a high demand area.
I see. Just help me to understand these two maps. This is the next map will be after completion of the school-based capital project. Just to pick a ward, my ward 23, and it was highly, the priorities was high. We have 7, and then when it become complete, then my ward will change it to be. I have a little bit of problem of reading. Will be the lowest or the high?
Right. So through the chair, in the first scenario, your ward, Ward 23, would be in the highest. So that means it's the ward most underserved. If the new capital program goes ahead and all of those centers get built, then your ward then changes from 40 to 49%. So it improves. So, yeah, and then the wards that are green are the ones who have the most access to service currently.
So, okay, I just wanted to just understand the map a little bit better. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. All right. Okay, Councillor Kresge?
Oh, I'm to speak?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're speaking.
Thank you. First of all, I have an amendment I can place. This is on behalf of Councillor Nunziata, which I'm placing on her behalf. And that's requesting Children's Services to report back on our growth strategy, especially as it relates to wards in the highest need and high priority. And then, so that's on behalf of Councillor Nunziata. And then I have an amendment, which is, because it was not one of the staff recommendations, which is for us formally to call on the province to maintain the cost share model, not to reduce it. So it's late, so I will keep my remarks brief. First of all, thank you to the deputants, for a new mother and a new resident of Toronto for coming, and Carolyn, as always, in the coalition. Thank you to staff. This has been an exceptionally challenging time in the face of uncertainty and changing proposals coming from Queen's Park. And thank you to our chair, who has emerged as a strong and powerful voice on childcare in this city, and I want to commend him for that. Childcare is unaffordable. We know that. It is the highest cost for childcare anywhere in the country is in our city. And if you're struggling already, getting a subsidy is particularly hard. We have 17,000 people on the waiting list for subsidies. Some people apply for a subsidy and find out that they qualified for it after their kids are in kindergarten. It happens. And so it's unaffordable to begin with. If you're struggling, it's deeply unaffordable based on the waiting list. And if you can afford childcare, it's hard to find a space. Currently, 31% of kids who need spaces for childcare can access them. Our growth strategy is targeting 50%, but that's a 10-year strategy. And so in that context, the conversation I desperately wish we were having today is how can we move faster to get all the people who need subsidies on subsidy? And how can we move faster to implement our growth strategy? I mean, the shame of it is when you talk to people in the streets about childcare, the conversation they want us to have is how can you do more and do it better and faster? Instead, the conversation we're having is how can we protect what we have? It's just not good enough. And that's not on our staff. They're doing remarkable work. I mean, we had an announcement in April of funding changes that was reversed in May, and then an announcement in August, and it's taken us a month and a half to find out the details of that. And so our staff are trying hard and their best. And so our motions here today is to ensure that we are protecting what we have. And we're going to do our very best to do that. But the conversation we in the city and with our provincial counterparts and with the federal government, whoever they may be come Tuesday morning, should be having is how do we do a better job in scaling it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cressy. I just want to briefly lend my support and add my voice to this issue. When you look at the map, it's rather glaring. And I saw former Councillor Janet Davis here earlier. I don't know if she's still here. But I remember two people who were really helpful when I first came on council. The first was actually Olivia Chow. She was very steadfast about wanting to ensure that I understood that there is a real need for more childcare in this city. And because I was a new councillor, she wanted to ensure that, or to sort of source me out as to seeing whether or not I actually cared. And I said, absolutely. I mean, it is so fundamental. It was fundamental then, it's fundamental now, and it was an issue and pressure then, and it is today as well. And then Councillor Davis. Councillor Davis was steadfastly, she would always come every year to me with the maps and say, well, look at your area. You want to make sure that you're fighting for this and so on. I'm saying, yes, Councillor Davis, I understood. I understood the map. I already got them. But she wanted to reinforce the fact. And I think she still did that to everybody. So I wanted to sort of acknowledge that and so on. Oh, there you are, Councillor Davis. Thank you. No, it was all really good. We're just saying good things about you, how you'd always come around every year and made sure we understood what the challenges were, and the fact that my area and others obviously did not have sufficient childcare, and that we were willing to fight for it. So I was just thanking you for that and so on, and Olivia Chow before you, so thank you. So this is really important. I mean, the young children that were here this morning, it was really nice to hear the laughter and the voices and so on, and in as much people think maybe this is disruption, but we're in a disruptive age, right? And so it's important to understand the young people that are here. I know my ward, and when we talk about development in the community, one of the primary things that comes up is around childcare, providing for such to ensure that it's available, and we're doing a lot of work. I mean, I want to thank the staff for Shanley and her team for the work that they're doing. I have to tell you, when I sit with them sometimes, I sit in admiration because of the pressure and the impact of decisions that we made, and then the challenges that they actually have to implement and actually put in place a reasonable response, and how we articulate and how we report out not only to simply councillors, because I think that we are in the back seat in this area. It's really about the moms and dads and families in our community who we are responsible to ensure that their needs are met based on the requirements, and particularly as it relates to the young people that are the future. And what we do for them now and how we invest in them will actually determine how they grow and how we as a society is enriched or not, depending on what we do. And as I realize that there's a need to, to save money and so on, there are some areas that we have to ensure we watch what the impacts are, because decision to save on one hand has a counter impact on the other hand, and those impacts are not, in my view, beneficial in the long term, and helping young mothers to realize, obviously, that they have a loving environment where their children can go, so they can either go to school, to work, or the other types of things, and creating opportunities and so on. So I think this is something that's everybody's, it should be in everybody's interest, and I think it's something that we need to ensure that we can do. Unfortunately, the way the city works, we are where the rubber hits the road, and so others can simply say, I'm not doing it, we're not funding it, and so on. We're often left with no choice. We actually have to do, because at the end of the day, we are the sort of first responders to these particular issues as such, and I think it's important in terms of what we're doing. So we're hopeful that a negotiation and conversations can take place. I'm heartened by, obviously, a government at Queen's Park that's actually interested in listening. That's my experience with them now. There was a time maybe that did appear that wasn't the case, but I can say I had a discussion with the Premier just a couple of days ago. We talked about a series of things, and I will tell you, I'm really enlightened by his sense of passion and understanding with these particular issues, and the moving forward in terms of collaboration and so on. I'm really looking forward to that, because fundamentally we have to address this challenge that is in front of us all to help our children, because they are in fact our future, and what we do for them today will depend on how they, what they become in terms of the future. So thank you, and we have your motion, Councillor Gill. Well, I didn't see your hand up. Sorry,
Earlier,
I hadn't seen it, so, okay.
Us women folk like to talk about childcare too.
Councillor, you actually can. So you have, I didn't see, because I would have gone after you then. Go ahead.
Yes, yes. I didn't get a chance to say, wait, I think you want me to speak first.
Okay.
I'm happy to go along with this. We have some that are ready to proceed, and I get that. But I just want us to give pause and think about this. I'm thinking of bringing forward a notice of motion in this effect. We need to really stop and look at this position that is so strenuously being fought for, that we build communities, that we build childcare centers, that we take the money now and we build them. And oh, by the way, sign this dotted line here that says we're not giving you operating funding to operate them. There is no question in my mind that the secret strategy here is to get us to build with public dollars on public land, in public buildings, a bunch of childcare centers that can't be operated unless we change all of our rules about investing those public dollars in not-for-profits, because they have a specific governance mechanism, and for us, a quality control over the care of the children. And I think we have to be very clear. It talks here about going forward and continuing to negotiate, and maybe by 2022, they'll get that they have to provide the operating funding as well. But there's a big what if they don't hanging in the air. And so I think we need to start doing some really heavily fortified operating statements. Statements that say the operating dollars go to public, not-for-profit types of centers for very specific and principled reasons. And that is how we can guarantee to you that we run a good children's services department. And so we want to continue to talk about, by 2022, you having operating dollars for us. But those are the conditions by which we guarantee you quality childcare services. And we want to continue to operate in that way. So I hope that that's what's at the end of this rainbow of building centers, that they come to their senses and realize you have to operate them. But I think we've got to be really clear in all of our own rules and our own terms of reference that that's why we operate them that way, because that's how we can deliver something that both the province and the city can be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. All right, so we have some motions by Councillor Cressy. Maybe just ask the clerk to put up the first one, please. All right, it's the first. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carries. Well, on behalf of Councillor, but it's yours now. Yeah. All right, number 2. All right. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Item is amended. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, members, we are now moving to EC 8.18. It was held by Councillor Grimes. Councillor Lai, you held that one. Question of staff.
818. The last one, the last.
Go ahead, please, Councillor.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions for staff. I realized that there's some warning sign on the premises. Can you explain what kind of sign? Are they some images, or can you just briefly explain to me on the bluffs?
Through the chair, the city has many signs. Together with TRCA, we've worked out, and municipal licensing and standards, we've worked out many signs. Some of them have a picture of the angle, a safe angle of repose, and basically a kind of a picture of the cliff, a caricature of a person falling over the cliff, expressing the danger. These signs basically outline that it's unsafe to be near the edge, and that there is a heavy fine for going over the edge.
Okay, are any of these signs or images in other language other than English?
I would have to check that. I'm not 100% positive, but the images are very clear.
So you're not sure?
I'm not sure about other languages.
It's just English and images, I suppose.
I'm getting the nod from the other side of the room that it's just English and images, yeah.
Okay. And also, you said there's a fine. How much is it? Is it maximum about, is it $5,000 maximum?
Through the chair, that's correct. The maximum fine under the Parks bylaw is $5,000. That would be on a Part 3 summons, so the Justice of the Peace would impose that penalty as a maximum.
And how do you enforce it? I see one of the signs that you sent to me is that you have to call 311 to report. So is that the only way that you enforce?
Again, through the chair, we do respond to service requests. However, at the Scarborough Bluffs, because of the public safety issue, we do dedicated patrols there. So we're there in advance of any calls. We had over 550 actual patrols there that resulted in about 309 bylaw charges of entering into the prohibited area.
How many? I'm sorry.
309 this year.
309 bylaw charges on. So you do enforce that?
Yes, ma'am.
So you have 550 patrols on that. Okay. And for the cost, the actual cost for emergency service, can someone tell me, do you have an idea of the actual cost of each emergency service call?
Mr. Chair, there are no extraordinary costs associated with delivering these services. The provision of technical rescue operations, of which Bluff Rescue is a core service component within the council mandated services provided by Toronto Fire. So there are no additional fees. We're not paying, we're not bringing staff in, we're not incurring additional costs. The delivery of those services is inclusive or included in the on-duty staffing and part of the more than 132,000 emergencies we respond to each year.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Okay, so did you wish to speak on this item? Yeah. No, you're the holder.
Thank you. Yes. for this motion, that recommendation that's coming forward, I do have a little bit of an issue with to implement fees for rescue efforts on a cost recovery basis, because, as I heard that there is no additional cost, and it will be quite dangerous, if I'm stuck there, and I wanted to get rescued, but I have to think twice now, because, I have to incur a financial cost on my business, and that's why, but I think, well, we can actually, when the report comes back, maybe that we'll deal with that. And I think we should actually address the root cause of the problem to stop people from being able to access those dangerous points of the bluffs. And perhaps, by posting signages. The reason why I said that there's other languages, because when we had some traffic calming in the area, my ward is just next to just very close to that, and I have calls from residents who don't speak English, and they ask me, they don't like it because, because they don't want the traffic calming, because they all go there all the time, a lot of times. So I'm just saying that in terms of education, I think we should probably explore more into different languages and so to make it safer, and the bottom line is to make sure that we will reduce and eliminate the opportunity to enter those dangerous areas. And also, I've heard that there's enforcement, and maybe perhaps we can do better on this. So, having said that, I think just for the report, I think I would support the motion, the recommendation, and I'd like to move that, Mr. Chair, if nobody else is speaking.
Thank you, Councillor. The matter is being referred to staff, so all those in favor of what is in front of us, opposed, that's carried. And I would simply say that, in fact, if we had a Harvard version of a PhD program on safety, I think people would still fail it, quite frankly, because people want to take risks, which is unfortunate. Okay, we have one final item left, which is Councillor McKelvey's item. Members, it was added as new business. Have you had a chance to read it? It is a report request from staff. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. That'll be sent to staff for a report coming back. Members, we have concluded the meeting, and I want to thank you all very much. So, motion to adjourn. Councillor Cressy, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. And simply to thank the staff, the clerk, and for spending the extra time, and thank everyone else for being here. Thank you. Have a good afternoon. Cheers.